about right now. Obviously, it is regarding Darren Till. And before I get to Darren Till and why I find this particular story very interesting, I want to make something very clear of why I love doing combat sports analysis, why I love doing combat sports uh, topics, why I'm geared towards combat sports when in reality, my specialty should be talking about life experiences and life lessons, right? But obviously, MMA is a certain niche that has a certain following. And because of that following, I think it garners a certain attention. But here's another thing about MMA uh, content, it goes beyond just MMA. You see, you can talk about MMA, but with it is attached to geopolitics, things that are going on around the world. And not only that, important topics and subjects that are going on in society. And MMA, the culture of MMA specifically, is not very much shy to these particular conversations. They're not particularly shy at all talking about these things. Whereas I've mentioned in the past, it really is all about predicated on the aspect of just dribble and shut up in most other sports and the sentiments that they go off of when it comes to talking about other subjects that are not pertaining to their sport. Well, this particular topic that we're talking about right now with Darren Till doesn't even go in the realm of MMA. In fact, it has nothing to do with MMA. It has more to do with boxing. And I'm going to tell you why this is an important topic to talk about that sort of correlates to what I was talking about early when I just started this live stream, which was literally just 2 minutes ago, which is this, right? What I like about Darren Till's story here is that there's a lot of redemption involved here, right? That's one of the things that I love covering about combat sports and how it can relate to real life scenarios. Darren Till was coming off of a losing streak from his UFC career, right? A lot of people were saying that he was a bad influence on Khamzat, that Khamzat shouldn't even train with this guy because he's just going to be a nuisance to him in some kind of capacity. Well, when I started watching this Darren Stewart fight, this boxing fight with him and Darren Stewart, I got to tell you, let me tell you what I saw. I said to myself, now I understand why Khamzat keeps this guy around. If Khamzat is going to go out there and fight guys with very good hands or very unorthodox fighting styles with the likes of Dricus du Plessis, obviously not somebody that has technical abilities with his striking at all. I'm talking about Dricus du Plessis, right? But Darren Till does. And I think there is something that he can offer to Khamzat Chimaev, which is give him a different look when it comes to people throwing hands at him. And it was only in the Darren Stewart fight I started to realize why Darren Till was a very important piece in Khamzat's game. Of course, there's the Muay Thai aspect of it as well. But here's another topic that I want to talk about specifically with Darren Till. He's going to have a lot of problems looking for opponents in the world of boxing, especially in the Misfits League of boxing. And not just that, the influencer aspects of boxing. He's going to have some serious problems. Why? He's too good. And not only is he too good, he's also unproven in the world of boxing. So in comes Tommy Fury. What is significant about Tommy Fury in this instance? Tommy Fury literally pulled out of the fight between him and Darren Till because Darren Till threatened to kick him. Now, would Darren Till have done such things in the boxing ring? You never know. There is this one video of this Russian gentleman who I think threw a head kick at another Russian gentleman. I believe he was a Chechnyan fighting another Russian, but he threw a head kick at him during a boxing match, right? And maybe this is what Tommy Fury was envisioning in his head. It's like, you know what? What if this guy is going to do this? Of course, he knows that there's banter involved. He knows that this is how the English talk to each other. They say all types of weird and unusual things, all for the sake of what you call in the English culture banter, right? And Tommy Fury knows that. He knows that Darren Till is just talking a whole load of smack. He's not really going to go out there and kick him or anything like that. But I tell you what Darren Till will do in a boxing match against you is punch your head in. And that right there is what he's really good at. What I really loved about the Darren Stewart fight, we're going to break down more of the techniques as we go on in this live stream. But the one thing I noticed that I loved him in the Darren Stewart fight was that he would constantly throw the jabs out there at a 50% rate, right? In other words, it's not too fast, it's not too hard, it's right there, right? As he's throwing this jab, he then comes in really hard. So it goes like this. This is literally, if you were Darren Stewart fighting Darren Till, okay, you are Darren Stewart, I'm Darren Till, you are the POV that's of Darren Stewart, right? This is what you're seeing as you're fighting Darren Till, right? That's what you're literally seeing as Darren Stewart when Darren Till is hitting you. Now, let's not get any confusion here. Obviously, there was a reason why they put this fight together. Darren Stewart versus Darren Till, both former UFC alumni. And even Darren Stewart at one point mentioned that people, no, I'm sorry, he had an opponent during the pandemic. Do you guys remember the first week of the pandemic, right? Darren Stewart fought some Polish fighter, and it was him and that Polish fighter in a cage rage promotion that fought each other for the sake of the UFC. So, in other words, it was a cage rage promotion, but this was a UFC fight. So, I hope you can follow me on that because I know that's going to sound very confusing. So, in other words, they were going to have the UFC London card. That UFC London card was going to have Tyron Woodley and Leon Edwards as the headline. And obviously, because of that, the pandemic happened, so they had to scrap that card altogether. But it was Darren Stewart and his Eastern European opponent. Let me see who that was. This was in the pandemic, like 5 years ago, and so they decided to put this MMA fight, or I'm sorry, this UFC fight in a Cage Warriors promotion. So that was in 2020, March of 2020. Okay, was that Eric Anders? No, it wasn't. No, Kevin Holland? No, 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 no. March 20th. Here we go. Bartosz Fabinski. So he lost that one by a decision. This was a UFC fight. So if you look in his record right here, it will say Cage Warriors, and then in between that is a UFC fight. So during the pandemic, right? Uh, that's that right there. The Bartosz Fabinski fight. That's an official UFC fight. I remember that fight vividly. So he was basically the first fight for the UFC during the pandemic. So that is what Darren Stewart is known for. And I believe, okay, when he fought Kevin Holland, Kevin Holland's family thought that they were fighting Darren Till because he was saying, "Yeah, I'm fighting this English guy named Darren." And of course, Darren Till being the more popular name, they started looking at this saying, "You know what? Are you fighting Darren Till?" And then to their surprise, no, they're not. But Darren Till and Kevin Holland did go at it at some point in backstage and whatnot. But yeah, that's neither here or there. But right now, as I'm about to retitle this video right now, I'm going to retitle this Darren Till. The I'm going to rename this Darren Till. Many boxers afraid to fight. Yeah, that's what I'm going to name it. Many boxers afraid to fight. Darren Till. Okay. Okay. Yeah, this is what I'm going to rename this because this is a fact, okay? I think that there's a lot of fighters in boxing that are scared to fight Darren Till. So there it is. I just renamed it Darren Till. Many boxers afraid to fight Darren Till. And this fight right here with Darren Stewart sort of proved that. Now, the reason why I think that many people are afraid to fight Darren Till is because, look, you look at his UFC record, right? Let's take a look at his UFC record. Darren Till, I'm talking about, right? Let's take a look at his. So when he came out of the UFC, these were the losses that he came out of, right? Unanimous decision back in the pandemic. 2021, Derek Brunson, he loses that one badly in a rear naked choke. And then Dricus du Plessis right afterwards, which is at UFC 282. That was back in, yeah, 2022. And then, yeah, after that, we've never seen Darren Till for like about a good 2 to 3 years. You could say 2 years because obviously that last time that he fought was Dricus in December of 2022. So December 2022 is sort of closing in on 2023. So you could say 2 years of the hiatus as he's been out of the UFC. The big major win that he's ever really won was against Kelvin Gastelum, right? That was a very big win. Make no mistake, Kelvin Gastelum at the time was one of the top guys in the world. He was coming off of a loss against Israel Adesanya in a fight that really was just absolutely a back and forth with him and Kelvin Gastelum and Izzy. So Kelvin Gastelum comes off of that loss and he goes and fights Darren Till, right? Darren Till then comes in there and fights him uh, during the BMF card for Jorge Masvidal and Nate Diaz as the headline. And that was one of the first events that Donald Trump had actually gone to. Well, that night, Darren Till was close to not going to that fight because he even had some visa issues coming into New York during that week. So he wins that fight, then comes and puts up a bigger challenge in Robert Whitaker. He comes and fights Robert Whitaker. He loses that by a decision, comes back, fights Derek Brunson, loses by rear naked choke. And then Derek Brunson is not even in the UFC anymore. He goes into the PFL, then loses to another submission against Dricus du Plessis. And Dricus du Plessis is now what? The world champion at 185. Okay. So what is the pattern here, right? Obviously, he lost to Jorge Masvidal by knockout. That right there was a very impressive win for Jorge Masvidal. Very few people can truly knock out Darren Till. In fact, he's only had really one knockout loss his whole entire career, and that was against Jorge Masvidal. So all his losses, Tyron Woodley submission, Robert Whitaker decision, uh, another submission loss by Derek Brunson, another submission loss by Dricus du Plessis. What's the common denominator here? Darren Till never gets tired when it comes to striking, ever. That is the last thing Darren Till is going to get tired from is the striking portion of martial arts, mixed martial arts in particular. But in boxing, guess what? This is where he shines the best. Now, look at what he did to Anthony Pretty Boy Taylor. Let's take a look at how he beat Anthony Pretty Boy Taylor in his boxing career. Now, Till was scheduled to make his professional debut against Julio Cesar Chavez. Now, can you imagine, right? In your first fight as a boxer, you're fighting Julio Cesar Chavez, but the bout was canceled due to health issues with Mike Tyson, and because of that, the fight was postponed. So it wasn't the fault of Julio Cesar Chavez or Darren Till. It was Mike Tyson, which scrapped the fight altogether. Uh, Muty, he takes on Muty, and I don't think that ever pulled through. That fight never pulled through. So he goes and fights Anthony Pretty Boy Taylor back in January at a Misfits card, right? He knocks him out in the 6th round. Okay, that's how he comes into the boxing game. Next fight, Darren Stewart, another MMA fighter. Obviously, this is the trajectory that these guys are going to take because that's just what you do. Muhammad Mutiny, by the way, was an exhibition fight that he had in Abu Dhabi, and that was in July of 2024. So, okay, even after The Dricus du Plessis loss, he maintained sort of staying active in the boxing world. Muhammad Mutiny, then Anthony Pretty Boy Taylor, now Darren Stewart. So now he goes and tries to fight Tommy Fury. Why doesn't Tommy Fury want to fight him? I mean, look, Tommy Fury didn't look all that great against the Hungarian journeyman that he took on. I mean, it wasn't really all that good. It wasn't really all that of a good performance. So how much better is he going to do against Darren Till, an MMA fighter that is not afraid of you? You know what I mean? Like, think about that. Yeah, that's what I'm going to retitle this stream right here. Boxers afraid to fight Darren Till. Here's why. And yeah, there it is. There it is. That is what I'm going to rename this live stream. So yeah, boxers afraid to fight Darren Till, and these are the exact reasons as to why. Well, look, Darren Till can really strike, right? Again, I told you the biggest problem Darren Till has is losing stamina during grappling exchanges. Well, in boxing, that's not something that he has to truly worry about. He doesn't have to worry about that anymore, right? Look at the fight that he had with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Okay, that's where him and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson headlined back in 2018, right? He won that by unanimous decision. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson had about 67 kickboxing fights or point kickboxing fights, and then thousands and thousands of point fighting karate matches. This is a guy that knows how to strike. He knows how to get in there and knows how to use his range, knows how to use his distance. This is a high level striker. Darren Till beat him soundly. And then obviously he got a shot against Tyron Woodley. What was the common denominator? It was the striking. Jorge Masvidal, he got knocked out. You can toss that up with two things, right? Jorge Masvidal being at the top of his game, and then on top of that, Jorge Masvidal just really being on top of his game and catching Darren Till at a moment where Darren Till made a mistake in front of the world. And sometimes we often look at mistakes from other boxers and think that that is somehow indicative of how they're going to do in the next fight. We've seen that with Pacquiao. He gets knocked out by Marquez, and automatically we assume that Floyd is just going to walk right through him. And quite frankly, that's sort of what happened. And the reason why Floyd even took that fight was because he thought that, hey, you know what? This guy got knocked out. There's some vulnerabilities in there. Let's try and exploit it. Okay, but after Darren Till lost to Jorge Masvidal, he came back to fight Kelvin Gastelum in the same manner that he knows how, which is being an efficient striker. Robert Whitaker, he lost because of grappling exchanges. Derek Brunson, he lost because of grappling exchanges. Dricus du Plessis, he lost because of grappling exchanges. And in 23, 24, and 2025, here he is now in the boxing world doing something completely different. And he has the stamina to do it. He has knockout power. He's got serious knockout power. He's knocked out Donald Cerrone, obviously went the distance against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Okay, but in all honesty, yeah, he never really had a lot of knockouts in the UFC, come to think of it, right? Other than uh, Donald Cerrone. The only difference, the only difference is this. In the boxing world, you don't need to be a serious knockout artist, but it does help. He does have a little bit of a knockout power, but at the same time, along with that knockout power, he also has the proficiency to go in there and box and box and box for as long as he needs. An 8 rounder. He just did an 8 rounder in his second professional fight, and it was absolutely no issues whatsoever. Let's take a look at what Michael Bisping had to say about Darren Till, because I know he had something very interesting to say about Darren Till, and let's hear what Michael Bisping has to say about Darren Till. Now, by the way, this is very fresh right now, me just watching this. So Okay, yeah, let's watch this right now. Obviously on audio form, and I'm going to, yeah, kind of
And there was some high drama as well. We're going to go through it all. I'm telling you, Misfits was a shit show. Misfits is the perfect name. What was I watching before that main event? However, the main event was fantastic. A tremendous fight. We're going to go through what happened. And we're also going to talk about the fights tonight. Gilbert Burns is back in action, taking on Michael Morales.
Okay, well, we're not going to have Michael Bisping talk about that. I'm going to talk about that, but more focused towards Darren
The
Till.
undefeated Ecuadorian. So we're going to talk about that as well. We'll go through the fight card, give you a quick preview. So anyway, Darren Till back in the squared circle once again, this time going up against Darren the Dentist Stewart, of course, a former fighter in the UFC. Both guys fighters in the UFC. Misfits build. This is Darren Till the striker versus Darren Stewart the grappler. I don't see Darren Stewart as a grappler, although the man can grapple.
Yeah, I agree with that. He's not much of a grappler as well, but yeah, I completely agree with that assessment right
A
there.
little bit. So can Darren Till. Now, all you people might talk shit about Darren Till because I always say, listen, the man's championship caliber. I'm telling you right now, what we saw was vintage Darren Till. Yes, of course, he went to the judges' scorecards, but holy shit. Darren Till's striking is phenomenal. And when he went out,
And that's exactly what I saw out of that fight, right? What Darren Till was able to do in the UFC, he translated that in the boxing ring. And again, he looked really sufficient in the way that he was maneuvering around, the way that he was keeping Darren Stewart at bay while Darren Stewart was coming forward at him. It was just brilliant boxing on his part.
out there in the first round, I am telling you, he was fast, he was sharp. The left hand was absolutely deadly. Big looking left hook, sits down Darren Stewart. I thought, oh, this one's going to be done over. This is going to be nice and quick. But Darren Stewart, holy shit, talk about a tough son of a bitch. Came out in round two, same again. Darren was all over him. He was too fast, he was too quick, he was too slick. But Darren Stewart is a tough son of a bitch, and he kept backing up Darren.
And that's one thing that I noticed about Darren Till and Darren Stewart. Darren Till was doing a very good job of keeping him at bay, but Darren Stewart would not go away for the life of him. He constantly went forward towards Darren Till, tried to basically break him at a forward motion. But this is how you know Darren Till really knows what he's doing in there in the boxing ring. He was able to offset that. He was able to still jab him away as he was backing up, and he was still able to hurt him as he was backing up. Even at the end of the eighth round, the eighth and final round of the contest, he was able to rock him and hurt him and put him down in a very climactic ending, quite frankly.
Till, okay? Get backing up against the rope. And as the rounds went on, where Darren Till was fast, he was precise. His strikes were like lightning. That left hand, just unbelievable. But Darren Stewart, holy shit. Till even said it in the post-fight interview. Cut his head open. I want to see what's inside there because
he's one tough bastard.
I'm telling you, this man can take a shot. And what happened was Darren Stewart was working his way back into the fight. Non-stop forward pressure, pushing him up against the rope, landing little shots. Sure, he wasn't as quick, he wasn't as smooth, he wasn't as powerful, but holy shit, the man is as tough as they come.
Yeah, and it was like that was all Darren Stewart knew how to do here was just apply forward press motion towards Darren Till, but Darren Till did a very good job of nullifying that in every possible way.
Into an absolute classic. It looked like Darren Stewart was coming back into the fight. It looked like Darren Till was starting to gasp, maybe punching himself out a little bit, but that's not what happened. Darren Till was victorious, but it wasn't without a bit of drama. In the eighth round, and it was 8 rounds of all-out action, by the way. We got...
And this is where he finally hurt him in the eighth round right here. Let's see if that is what Michael Bisping talks about here.
A movie-like finish. If you saw this in a Rocky film, you'd call absolute bullshit.
This is #1 bullshit.
But this is what happened. Darren Till was landing. It was the left hand the whole fight, but then the right hooks came into play. Darren Stewart was in his face. He was landing shots. He was roughing Till up. Till had blood coming out of his eyes. He was looking tired. He was looking gassed, looking like Darren Stewart.
And we knew what we knew about Darren Till the whole entire time. We know that he can take a punch. We know that he can take a hit. And that's exactly what happened here. He showed that. But more importantly, what he showed was that he has the skills to pay the bills in the boxing ring. And I honestly think that this is the reason why a lot of people are going to be afraid to fight Darren Till moving forward. And quite frankly, if he continues on with this path, I think that, yes, he is going to have much better skills as time goes on, especially if he gets matched up with the right people. Abdul Rahim, all right, shout out to you, my man. He says, hi, assalamu alaikum, how are you doing? Like, comment, subscribe. You know everything about boxing, UFC, misfits, and combat sports. You must be a professional athlete and intelligent person. Well, thank you so much, Abdul Rahim. I think it is a little bit of a combination of those things that you mentioned. Not only do I have experience training and competing in combat sports, in Muay Thai, in MMA, in boxing, in Taekwondo, in high school wrestling, in wrestling, period, in grappling, all of these things. I combine that with also the education that I learned through the world of public relations, journalism, communications, and try to convey that through my channel, which is an MMA channel, and just basically combine all those things together to try and create a very interesting content that is MMA centric, but also touches other subjects outside of MMA as well. So thank you for that comment. Thank you for that notice, and thank you for the compliment. I always appreciate it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you as well, brother. Let me know what part of the world you are from, Abdur Rahim, and everybody else that's on the chat. Also, let me know what part of the world you are from as we move on and continue with this subject as we talk about why Darren Till is going to be hard to match as time goes on in the world of professional boxing. Look, there's plenty of instances in the world of boxing where a boxer had an MMA fighter had came in and upsetted a boxer. Clay Collard was a former UFC veteran. By the way, a former UFC veteran that doesn't even have a decorated career in the likes of that of Darren Till, not even Conor McGregor, not even anybody that has really transitioned from one sport to the other, in particular an MMA fighter, all the way to being a boxer, right? Uh, the reality is that a lot of boxers do fail when they go. I'm sorry, a lot of MMA fighters do fail when they go and try to move up into boxing. And the same thing for boxers trying to transition into MMA. Now, even Clarissa Shields, who's now fighting both, she had some of her issues and battles in the cage where she's been out wrestled a few times by, well, I think she only lost once. That was the only time that she was ever really uh, outclassed or anything like that. But on any regard, yeah, you know, she's not a champion of the MMA world, right? Not in the way that she is in the boxing world. James Toney, another example of that. But there are a lot of instances where MMA fighters do transition to becoming a whole lot more of a successful boxer. Uh, Dylan White is an example of that, although you can argue that Dylan White only had one MMA fight, and that is something to take into consideration. But the other aspect of that is that Dylan White was also a Muay Thai fighter. So in reality, he really came from the niche sporting background of MMA, or at least one of the compository sports that is involved with MMA, which is Muay Thai. But that right there is another example of a successful transition. Lucas Brown is another example of this, right? Many people don't understand that Lucas Brown, before he was a top Australian boxing heavyweight, one of his top opponents in the MMA world was Daniel Cormier. In a very early stage of Daniel Cormier's career, Lucas Brown was one of his opponents. And then eventually, Lucas Brown just decided he was going to go and stick to boxing. And you know, he had a pretty decent career in boxing. Obviously, he fought the likes of Dylan White. He fought the likes of David Allen. Didn't go too well for him in those fights, but he's had other successes outside of those fights. So it all varies, and then it also depends what it is that you're looking for as a boxer that turned into that came from the MMA background. What are you looking for? Are you looking for world titles? Are you looking to just do misfits fights? Are you looking to do Jake Paul fights and just make money out of that and then ride off into the sunset? Are you trying to get as many fights as you can to just gain as whatever experience you have with an aimless goal of not really trying to go for any championships, rankings? regional titles or anything like that, right? But maybe you just want to do it to fight random names and to stay relevant in the world of combat sports without any true relevance in terms of future rankings or contendership. So Abdul Rahim says here, I am from the UK, but sports is very tribal and they support their own fighter. Yes, very true. Support the club of their own players. They can relate by their origins. You have no bias, and all types of fighters, doesn't matter about the race. Well, you are right about that, right? I will give you props on that particular comment right there, Abdul Rahim. You are right. There is a part of me that is not very biased, right? Although I do have biasness when it comes to the world of combat sports, and I think you would kind of understand and draw the line where that is if you can use your intelligence and understand my own social contract and my own self-identification of whether that would be a Muslim or whether that would be an Arab male or whether that would be somebody that lives in the United States. All these different classifications, right? You could sort of understand where my biasness comes from. But if I'm breaking down a specific fight or I'm breaking down a specific fighter, you can tell that I'm very objective in everything that I look at. I look at, let's say, the JDM and the Islam fight. We all know that JDM and Islam, well, it's a very 50-50 fight. Look, who do you think I'm going for in that fight? I think you probably have a good guess as to who I'm going to go for in the JDM Islam fight. But even with that specific bias that I have, I still understand MMA in the way that I understand MMA, and that is through its fullest extent in its history and the realities of matchups and styles and maybe even size differences, which means that I recognize that even though I'm going to be inherently biased towards Islam Makhachev, I also vehemently understand that there is a certain disadvantage that he has going into this fight. And those are the things I'm going to talk about. I'm not just going to say, well, you know what, JDM is here and he's going to get smoked by Islam in the first round because there's just no way that he's going to win. Now, I certainly don't believe that. If I really believe that, I would tell you from an objective point of view. But in reality, I don't believe that because I truly believe that this can be a very dangerous fight for Islam. It can be very difficult. And I think that he can get hurt in this fight. But ultimately, I do think that there is a bigger window for him to win based on the fact that this is a sport that he's really been doing for a very long time. Now, okay, that's just an example of that. I didn't want to make this about the breakdown of Islam versus JDM because we have plenty of months to talk about that. But what we do have is the possibility of Khamzat and DDP. Well, not a possibility. It's now a signed deal. We can talk about that, which, by the way, we will talk about sometime. Yeah, right now. We can talk about it right now. I think we've talked enough about Darren Till and his potential in the boxing world. We're still going to go back to that. I'm going to tell you how he's going to do later on against top name boxers based on this performance that I've seen him from Darren Stewart and from Anthony Pretty Boy Taylor, and how he will match up with the likes of, let's say, Brendan Glanton in the world of in the world of cruiserweight boxing. How is he going to do against Chris Billum Smith? How about some bigger names and some tougher names like Jay Apataya? How will he do in that? How will he do against, let's say, maybe other 175ers out there? Arthur Bivol, maybe that's too much of a high level and too advanced for him. But what about if, let's say, he goes out there and fights Joshua Buatsi? Imagine that, Darren Till versus Joshua Buatsi. Imagine a world where Darren Till graduates from the misfits boxing, this influencer boxing space, and goes into this different space of top contenders and real big names that are in the world of professional boxing. Now, we are going to talk about that. We will discuss that. We will try and understand and analyze the difference of the matchups that he's going to face in that. But for now, we're going to break down the the DDP versus the Khamzat Chimaev fight. And I think that a lot of people are looking at this fight as a 50-50 fight, and I agree. Now, I've given a breakdown of this specific fight. I think you guys can check it out. There is a video that I have of this particular matter at hand with DDP and Khamzat. Let me see what video I had for that particular video here. What is it? What video did I have for that one? Okay, so let's see here. What video is this? Okay. Oh, okay. This was 3 months ago. All right. How about this? I made this video 3 months ago. I think, yeah, I think you guys would really appreciate this one right here. So look, check out this video that I had 3 months ago. So by the end of this video, I'm going to show you the rest of the graffiti on this wall. But for now, we got some news to talk about. Specifically, with Khamzat now signing to fight Dricus du Plessis. We're going to talk about the psychology. We're going to talk about the physical breakdowns, the techniques, and the prediction of the fight. If I get in this early. So okay, check out that video. That video was done 3 months ago. Okay, because I confirmed that this fight was going to be signed. And yeah, I knew that this fight was going to be signed literally 3 months ago. And here it is. People are still watching it, obviously, because, yeah, it is what is going on right now. So I've had some pretty good comments in this particular channel. So you know what? This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to read the comments of of this um, of this video. And you guys can watch the videos as well, and we'll go from there. So Together Strong 1497 says, first good breakdown I've seen of this fight. Well done. And I said, thanks, fam. I hope that you enjoyed the video. Inshallah, I will see you in the live streams. Coach Josh says, LOL, DDP is in a land his ancestors conquered. Khamzat is in a land his ancestors who were displaced after being conquered. Very interesting comment there. Peaceful World says conquered. They weaseled and conned their way in, not like warriors who conquer you, funny guy. And then I wrote, good job, guys. Keep arguing. This is literally what I'm talking about right here in that comment section. So then what do we have here? Dricus doesn't drink for 2 months prior to a fight. Dricus won't give up, and he'll realize Khamzat is better than the rest. Being biased is a sickness, brother. So once again, here's one person obviously accusing me of being biased. Anthony Fonso says, Khamzat won't pitch. I don't understand what he means by that. Helmut Brugger says, you are a nut job. How on earth can you say that Dricus is a colonizer? That is simply a lie and defamatory. I hope Dricus sues you. I am an esteemed South African lawyer. I mean, look, this dude literally went out of his way to write that in the comment section right here below. This is what he said to me as a result of that. Okay, so then this man says, Dricus, son of a Boer warrior, Khamzat, son of... Okay, so yeah, a little bit of an offensive comment there. But nonetheless, that's what I do here. I let people say whatever it is that they want to say. But at the same time, I'm going to prove you wrong on that particular notion, right? So what basically this person is trying to say is that the weird stereotype that a lot of people have about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, right? Here's the thing, right? We would never go as Muslims, especially the Prophet himself, go out and violate children in that particular matter. I think the main thing that a lot of people are arguing is the chronological order of when these people met and when they actually married. And I think that's where the biggest debate is of this whole entire topic, and where a lot of people are sort of mistaken in this particular topic when it comes to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So let's be very clear. He did not marry anybody that was 6 or 9 years old. He married somebody that was of an age somewhere between 18, 19, or 20 in the way that it was described in a chronological order of when they actually married, not when they actually met or when they actually ran across each other, but the actual age of when they were actually eloped and married. And that is where some of the biggest misconceptions come from this particular matter at hand. So, okay, that's what I'm going to address in that particular matter. All right, let's listen up to this particular audio and see what we could pick up from 3 months ago when I made the psychological and technical breakdown of Khamzat and DDP.
But either way, here we are. Khamzat finally getting a title shot after years of struggle. And with struggle, it came in the situation of, let's say, the pandemic. He had COVID. He had serious issues. He had serious issues in trying to get better. He had underlining physical immune issues that really affected his COVID in a much different way than everybody else, right? So he was really messed up.
So that's another thing people have to understand about going into this fight, right? Darren Till, I'm sorry, let's get off Darren Till for a second. Dricus Duplessis, no, not Dricus Duplessis. Khamzat Chimaev had a serious issue with COVID. Shout out to Diego Lopez, my man, one of my longtime followers and people that have been on this chat plenty of times. Shout out to Diego Lopez, man. How are you, my man? I'm doing very good on this beautiful Sunday night going into Monday morning, as you know, talking about some fights and also talking about why Darren Till has a great chance of becoming a world champion boxer. Not only has a chance of being a world champion boxer, but I think he's going to have some serious problems in the influencer league, in the influencer space, finding opponents because he's just too good. So we're going to talk about that in a second. But for now, we are breaking down Khamzat and DDP right now and reacting to a video that I made 3 months ago titled Khamzat versus DDP, confirmed and signed. I predicted this 3 years ago, psychological and technical breakdown. Diego Lopez says, I'm going to listen along while I get some work done. Shout out to you, my man. Shout out to you. Always, that reminds me of when, I've gotten some work done in the past or done homework while I was listening to Joe Rogan or the other top podcasters or MMA influencers that are out there. And I'm glad to be in that position right now where I can do that for you as we talk about these particular topics that we are widely interested in the world of combat sports. So here we go, Khamzat DDP. After Khamzat DDP, we're going to talk about why Darren Till is going to be a world champion in the world of professional boxing and how that's going to look like in the competitive architecture that is in front of him in the world of boxing, but also talking about why he's going to have some harder matchups. So let's get right to it.
He was coughing up blood. He was speculating that perhaps maybe he had cancer. I mean, these are really serious matters at hand when you're dealing with Khamzat, right? Well, now he rose above that, started fighting again, but he was limited into where he was fighting. He was fighting in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia, in Abu Dhabi, or at least he was supposed to fight in Saudi Arabia with the Robert Whitaker fight that had fell off, and only for Ali Askarov, a guy that he knocked out previously in the regional scene, to come in there and follow suit into the whole.
Raw Dog says Haney and his father make boxing look like ish. Well, I'd like to know why that is, Raw Dog. I'd like to know why you think that. I think I may have a reason why you say that, but I want to know what your reason is, and I want to see what I can sort of piggyback off of that. No non-halal intended. When I say no piggyback, but yeah, no non-halal intended. Yeah, I want to know what you mean by that, because I kind of understand what you mean, right? Here's what I will say: I don't like the aspect of suing. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, right? You know that I'm a fellow Muslim brother. Devin Haney is a Muslim fighter. I support all Muslim fighters. But I don't know what to say about a guy that is suing another guy. Like, bro, there is no suing and fighting. You know what I mean? So if that's what you mean, let me know because I can kind of understand your sentiment on that particular topic at hand. But thank you for bringing up Devin Haney and his dad, maybe a subject that we will also talk about in this live stream. Thank you for that. But yeah, for now, Khamzat and DDP.
Situation of replacements and whatnot. Khamzat finally comes back. He gets a win over Robert Whittaker, and now we're left wondering if this is a good matchup for him and Dricus du Plessis. And I believe that it is. Is it a good matchup for Khamzat? That we don't know. But what I believe is that it's a good matchup for both of them. And let me explain why.
So yeah, what I'm basically about to say here is why this is a 50-50 fight between Khamzat and DDP. It really is a 50-50 fight, and watch the breakdown of this and why I think that.
Dricus relies a lot on his physical attributes. You know who else relies a lot on their physical attributes is Khamzat Chimaev. So you're dealing with two powerhouses, not only on the power side, guys that have knockout power, guys that have wrestling power, wrestling skills, but ultimately I think this is where Khamzat is going to shine a whole lot better than Dricus du Plessis.
So a 50-50 fight like this is a 50-50. But if early on Khamzat gets a hold of the wrestling and gets a single leg, gets a double leg, gets a hold of anything that deals with Dricus du Plessis, I mean, he is going to have an early start and an early head start and an early advantage and more leverage on his side as this fight continues on. So yes, these guys are dead even on the feet. They're both dead even, maybe even in their physical attributes and physicality. But when it comes to the wrestling, this is where the difference is going to be broken. And this is where I think all the technical deficiencies that Dricus du Plessis has gotten away with in the past, he's not going to be able to get away with against Khamzat.
We're going to get to the technique of it. Let's get to the psychological side.
And by the way, this video, I also made a psychological breakdown of this particular fight as well. And I think it's really important to kind of delve into that because not a lot of MMA content creators really delve into the psychological aspects of mixed martial arts. And I think you would really gain and benefit a lot from combining that type of breakdown, the psychological breakdown. There's a lot of stories behind that you can create out of that. Not only is there a lot of stories you can create out of that, but you can also create a whole lot of different analysis that sort of correlates into how they are going to perform. Because how people perform at a fight night really is predicated on their psychological factors and their demeanor, and not only that, their overall mood and temperament going into the fight. But let's go on with this.
The reason why this fight is going to be so good and so entertaining, but also extremely competitive, is because Dricus is the only guy that can realistically go in there and handle somebody like Khamzat. The physicality, the fact that he has this attribute of having a high cardio based on the way that he trains under the sauna, under hot conditions, and not only that, in high elevation as well. All of this.
So the reason why he trains in hot conditioned weather is because it helps increase your VO2 max. And then on top of that, he lives in a high elevated area in South Africa, which ultimately helps his cardio and his VO2 max even more.
This combination for Dricus du Plessis is really important in making him a whole lot more unique than everybody else. And then on top of that, the way that he fights, it's very much unpredictable. There is no rhythm. You see, when you learn how to fight from the very beginning of, let's say, a boxing gym or a Muay Thai gym, they teach you the basics and there's rhythm. There's rhythm that goes into it. And sometimes when you go with the rhythm, you sort of understand where the guy is coming to go next. Okay? That's rhythm. You learn it in Taekwondo, especially in karate, when you are doing katas, you're doing forms, and things of this nature. You develop a very predictable style in nature. So in turn, what we got with Dricus du Plessis is a guy that has no windup. He'll literally just throw shots out of nowhere like this, switch stances, kick, and then out of nowhere, he'll throw like body kicks out of nowhere like that. And it doesn't even look pretty. It's just out there like that.
with no wind up to anything. That's Drickus in the way that he fights. Now with Khamzat, there isn't really a whole lot of rhythm in the way that he fights either. But the way that he fights, it is as if you can't do anything about it once he shoots a takedown on you. And that right there, this is where the fight is going to be a difference maker. Now, that's what I said, right? I told you that the wrestling is where this fight is going to be an absolute difference maker. But all right, let's continue on with this. Movie as friends. I live in Surfside, right down the street from there. All right, well, shout out to you, my man. Shout out to you, movies as friends. All right. Or Khamzat, he's going to have the opportunity to take Drickus down multiple times over and over again. So that is one thing that you have to look forward to in this fight is that he is going to take Drickus du Plessis down over and over again. What is the question though while he is taking him down over and over again? Raw Dog here says Khamzat should have the advantage 60-40 in my opinion. Too much skill, grappling, and pace. Yes. I think the pace of his grappling I think is ultimately what is going to confuse the heck out of Drickus du Plessis because most guys that try and grapple Drickus du Plessis, it's a very slow and methodical manner, not in the way that Khamzat strings it along together in the speed and the accuracy and the consistency that he does it. Movies, his friend says Khamzat needs a finish early against DDP or he's going to gas and DDP will manhandle him. Now, that is the overall consensus opinion, isn't it? Movies, his friends. They often say that yes, Khamzat doesn't have a lot of stamina. Where is this concept from where they say that Khamzat doesn't have stamina? Well, I'll tell you, it comes from the Gilbert Burns fight. But I say this over and over again, and it is not in any way to defend Khamzat, but rather to stick to the facts of what happened and the conditions that he fought in that fight, which was that it was during a Ramadan. When Khamzat fought Gilbert Burns, it was during a Ramadan, and I know this because while I was watching Khamzat fight, it was still daylight in the West Coast because I remember it was a Florida fight, so I still was not able to eat yet during that time. Strangely enough, right? So that's why I remember it was it was a Ramadan fight. Diego Lopez says the fight was also fought at a crazy high pace. Correct. And just like this fight, it's also going to fight at a crazy pace, but it is Khamzat who's going to push the crazy pace. Whereas with Gilbert Burns, he sort of matched the crazy pace with Khamzat as a result of that. Raw Dog says, I see no issues with his tank. That's what I'm saying, right? So that is why I say they are predicating this on the Gilbert Burns fight under the conditions that he had that he was fasting during Ramadan. Movies' friend says, doesn't Khamzat have one lung? I don't know where I heard that. Is that true? Was there some kind of surgery or something that he had to do to sort of do that? I mean, let me know. Let me know on the comment section below. I don't know where uh, that rumor came from, or maybe if that has something to do with the extensive COVID sickness that he had going on that really affected him in the long run. But yeah, let me know in the comment section below what you mean by Khamzat only having one lung. The question is, can he take him down and keep him down? The answer is no. I honestly think that Drickus is going to come right back up over and over again, and Khamzat has to work even harder to keep him down. And not only that, maybe catch him with a few good shots with a ground and pound position, maybe on the full guard, maybe on the half guard, or maybe on the full guard position. That's what you got. Drickus is very unpredictable. Khamzat has to be first. He has to fight with high volume. So you see that? I said it right here, and this was 3 months ago. I said that Khamzat has to fight first. He has to be first, and he has to do it at a very fast and high pace in order to make Drickus work. Right? That's one thing that he has to do. He's got to make Drickus work on this one. Similar to Sean Strickland in the first Strickland DDP fight. He put up a lot of
volume in order to offset Dricus Duplessis. And that's what Khamzat needs to do. But again, very early, I gave you a little bit of some breakdowns, a little bit of some backdrop. Speaking of backdrop, right? Giving you a little bit of some backdrop on Khamzat Chimaev and how he's going to go about this fight. Now let's talk about the psychological side of things, because I think this is where the fight is really important. So the psychological side of things.
And this is where the psychological side of this fight is being talked about right here.
I gotta understand Khamzat Chimaev, right? He's going to be coming off of Ramadan. And I know, as a Muslim, it sounds antiquatedly biased on my part, but the reality is once you get out of Ramadan, which, by the way, more than likely when this fight is going to take place after Ramadan, Khamzat Chimaev is going to be in gear and in full tact with his focus. Because ultimately, if you do Ramadan correctly, and you do Ramadan to the fullest extent of doing the prayers, doing all the fasting, and things of this nature, I promise you, your hyper-focus for the entire year is going to be different. This is where Khamzat is coming from. Now, as for Dricus, I've mentioned to you over and over again about the tough training style and the tough training modules that he goes through. This is going to take him very far in this fight. But I honestly think there is a limit. There is a limit in how he's going to fight. Okay? It's going to be limited in terms of breaking points. I think that DDP has a breaking point here.
So I'm going to talk about the breaking point of DDP in just a second on this video. So Raw Dog says, DDP strikes have to inflict damage. Otherwise, I see the pace putting him on a defensive the majority of the fight. So DDP strikes have to inflict damage. Correct. Yeah, he has to damage him badly in order for him to be even closely effective towards Khamzat. Movies, his friend says, Khamzat suffered a bad lung infection due to COVID, but he's got both lungs. Okay, so that's what you mean by both lungs. Yeah, we don't know the extent of how COVID damaged his lungs, right? Only he would know. But if he does know something that we don't know, you would imagine that that is something that he would hide vehemently, only because it would be a strategic disadvantage for the other opponents to find out these particular mishaps that he has going on. But all right, back to this video right here.
In that moment of when the fight gets hard and he starts thinking to himself, you know what? This is a whole lot more difficult than I thought it would be. A whole lot more difficult than, let's say, his previous opponents, right? So what is he going to think in his head when he is no longer being hammered? And now that he's the nail, he has to compensate for that. And how is he going to do that? Well, he has to dig something deep inside him that he's never dug before, because if he doesn't, I'm telling you, Khamzat is a completely different level when it comes to the wrestling pace. I gotta tell you, there's guys out there that when you wrestle them, they give you a certain rest. You know who does that the best? Jiu-jitsu guys. Jiu-jitsu guys are really the best at knowing how to rest when the action is flowing, right?
All right, so here's the thing that here's something that I kind of noticed about that, right? Khamzat has no rest at all. Like, he literally has no chill during these grappling exchanges. He comes right at you, straightforward, right away. No methodical step, no breathing patterns of trying to catch his breath or anything like that. Just go straight forward at you. And I think part of that is because he's been grappling for such a long time, and he's such a phenom at it, that it's gotten to a point where he can really go at a fast pace where he doesn't have to worry about gassing out. Because what did I say about Darren Till and his stamina, right? He has stamina for striking for days, maybe not so much with grappling. It would comes out, it's the opposite, or maybe it's both. Maybe he has the capacity to box and kickbox for a long time, but also has the capacity to really grapple at a high pace for a very long time, and that may be a contribution from his VO2 max levels, or just the way that he trains to get those VO2 max levels to where they need them to be.
What comes on is not that guy. He's not a flow wrestler or anything like that. He's not flowing around. He's coming to shoot in on you, pick you up, dump you on your head, and keep you on the ground, either by catching a submission later on, or eventually just finishing the line with some strikes from the bottom. That's Khamzat's whole entire game. And if not, he can knock you out on the feet. I don't think any of these guys are going to knock each other out on the feet whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm going to say that right now. I don't see any of these guys knocking each other out. It's either going to be by a decision, or it's either going to be a submission on the part of Khamzat. And you'd be surprised also if maybe DDP was the guy to submit Khamzat. Let's not forget, there is a possibility of that happening. Right now, obviously, he was able to do that to Izzy, but then you got to wonder what does it mean to be Izzy nowadays, right? I mean, is he still the same guy? Is he a shell of himself? Who knows? We'll see.
Because I think they're too highly technical. They're too high level in their defense, which is why they are where they are. But at the same time, I think it's really going to be a serious issue for both of them on the clinch position. Because like I said, Khamzat.
So I'll tell you where this fight is going to be won, especially for Khamzat, maybe also for DDP as well, but for both of them, for just argument's sake, right? I think that it is the clinch position. The clinch position is going to be very essential in this fight, and this is why.
It has the capabilities of taking him down. But can he keep him down? And furthermore, who is better in the clinch exchanges? Who is better? We don't know. Only time will tell. And as the time goes on before this fight starts, I'm going to be doing more videos of it. Obviously, I gave a little brief synopsis on both of their mental state, right? Drickus is a party guy. Is he not? I'm sure he parties.
A lot of people had a problem with me saying this part right here, right? Where I say that Drickus is a party guy. Look, here's the thing you got to understand about Dagestani and Chechen fighters and Muslim fighters in general. They do not party whatsoever. There is no party with these guys. These guys are not doing any of these things whatsoever. What these guys are doing is they train, and then they train some more. And then when there's nothing to do, they do things that are related to training, and that's it. But for the Western fighter, their whole prerogative is we're going to train, and then at the end of the night, we're going to get drunk, and then maybe even 10 days of victory, a victory lap that you take. Maybe we're going to get drunk and gain a whole bunch of weight in between that, like Paddy Pimblett. This is not the lifestyle of a Muslim fighter, and in particular, a Muslim fighter that lives a fundamentalist lifestyle, both for religion and both fundamentally for MMA. That's the reality of these guys. So you got to understand, these guys are in shape all year round, and this is the reason why. So yeah, shout out to Drickus on this one. He's got a tough fight ahead of him, man. He really does.
Khamzat doesn't party at all. This is going to be very detrimental, and that is going to be the psychological factor that I think you need to take into consideration. Because a lot of these people that are jealous of the Dagestani fighters, that are jealous of the Chechens and all of that, you need to have a rude awakening and understanding that these guys don't train and they don't go out and fight just so they.
Thank you for that comment right there. Movies as friends. Did you see Pimblett and Arman agree to fight? No, I didn't see that. You know what? That would be a great move up for Paddy Pimblett if you think about it, right? You see the way that Paddy dismantled Michael Chandler, right? I know people are going to say Michael Chandler sucks. He should be able to do that. Not so fast. If you are able to do that to Michael Chandler, then that means you have an opportunity to move up. And next step is that of Arman Tsarukyan. And I think that if he beats Arman Tsarukyan, then Paddy Pimblett is everything that the hype says that he is, right? Or at least deserves the hype that he has, because before it's like, well, he has all this hype, but we don't really know if he's the real deal or not. Now we're starting to really slowly peel back the reality that maybe he can be the real deal. Diego Lopez also says, I think Armin versus Gaethje is going to get made. Okay, that's equally a good fight as well. So again, movies as friends. Just because Patty and Armin did agree to fight each other, especially on a verbal tip, right? It doesn't necessarily guarantee that that is going to be the case. Now, obviously, there's things that go on behind the scenes. Fighters say one thing to matchmakers, they do another thing when they're in front of the camera. But that's neither here or there. But it does kind of tell you how these decisions are made and how people go about their how people go about their pickings of opponents in relationship to what the matchmakers want. So yeah, a whole lot of interesting fights that we could potentially see at 155 as time goes on.
They can go and party afterwards. These guys train, they fight, and they do nothing else. They train, they fight, they do nothing else, and then they praise Allah, and then that's the name of the game. That's very hard to compete with. You've seen that video with Andrew Tate back in 2018.
And here's a little Andrew Tate reference, of course,
where he said, you know what, I knew that Khabib was going to beat this guy. Well, how did you know that, Andrew Tate? Well, look at what Khabib does. All he does is train Allah, train Allah. You want to have girls in a club? No. Do you want to go and do this? No. Do you want to go and chase whatever? No. Do you want to go out and drink in clubs? No. Train Allah, train Allah.
Movies His Friend says Justin is the only one on a one fight streak against a guy he's beaten before. Patty and Armin are on multiple fight win streaks. Correct. And that's probably why that would be a better matchup, right? Especially if you want to see Patty fight at a top level. I mean, Armin Sarukian doesn't get any more top than that. But imagine this. He does get that fight with Armin Sarukian. He beats Armin Sarukian, and Ilia Topuria beats Charles Oliveira. I'm telling you, if that happens, you're absolutely going to forget about Islam and Ilia Topuria. I know that fight will still be there, but Paddy Pimblett has a chance to really insert himself into a big money fight right up here. And he already has the notoriety, he has the backing, he has the name, and he has the evolving skills to go along with it to potentially compete at that level.
Right there is the reason why many of these guys at the top level are never going to beat the guys that are in the top level in Dagestan and Chechnya and elsewhere, and not even Bilal Muhammad. You know what? I'm going to end it with this. Speaking of Khabib, obviously this is not about Khabib, more about Khamzat. I really would like to see Khabib for that matter, or maybe even Khamzat, take on, let's say, a Muslim convert and then build him up as a champion somewhere down the road, right? Which, by the way, will absolutely prove the...
So the comment made by Movies His Friends, right? Interesting one right here. What if Ilia smokes Oliveira, becomes a lightweight champ? Likely to happen, right? But then again, Charles is Charles. You don't know what kind of Charles Oliveira shows up, right? And I do hear a lot of people say that Charles could take this fight. I do take those arguments into consideration, but again, one never knows until that happens. And then becomes a lightweight champ. What's next? Does he go to 170? According to Movies His Friends said. So Movies His Friends, that is a possibility. He can go to 170. And then again, sky's the limit. Look, the two guys that have the highest options out of everybody when it comes to big money fights around here, and multiple big money fights, is that of Ilia Topuria and Islam Makhachev. Both of these guys, all they have to do is keep winning and keep doing great things, such as moving up a weight and then beating the guys that are the champions of that weight class, and potentially meeting each other as time goes on, or maybe meeting somebody that is up there that is a formidable challenge or a big worthy name. Now, can you imagine? What about Shavkat versus Islam Makhachev? Right, that is a name and that is a possibility. What about Ilya Topuria versus Paddy Pimblett in this case. That is a possibility. You want Conor McGregor to come back. He doesn't need any title shots or any win streaks or anything like that. Ilya Topuria will give him an automatic shot coming back straight away, even after Conor McGregor coming off of 2 losses from Dustin Poirier, and even though Dustin Poirier is going to retire long gone after that. Movies' friend says, I think JDM has a good shot to beat Islam, honestly. I don't blame you for saying that. You know what? As an Islam Makhachev supporter, and obviously I thrive on saying that I don't have a favorite fighter, which I don't, but you would imagine that I do have a favorite group of guys that I go for. Even with that, I'm very much cognizant of the reality that JDM is a very formidable challenge for Islam Makhachev. And as a result of that challenge, yes, JDM presents some serious dangers against Islam Makhachev that we really have to take into high consideration, especially if you are a coaching staff that is working with Islam Makhachev. But for whatever reason, they have strong confidence that they can really do this. And I think the reason is predicated on what Islam Makhachev does to a lot of heavier guys in the gym. Now, we're talking about practice, right? You know, the old Allen Iverson saying, dog, we talk about practice, right? When people accuse him of missing out on team practices and whatnot, his response was, well, dog, we're talking about practice. And nowadays, whenever an MMA fighter or boxer brags about sparring or training sessions or how they did with a top name in these particular settings, well, most people are going to say something along the lines of, dog, we're talking about practice, right? But by the end of the day, that is practice. It's still an indication of how he does and what he is going to do at a higher weight class. He was able to out-grapple the likes of Luke Rockhold when Luke Rockhold was the 185 champ. He's been in there with Daniel Cormier, has presented serious problems with Daniel Cormier, right? Ali Abdelaziz has said something to the effect that Islam Makhachev is stronger than Ankalaev. Now, I got to be honest with you. I don't know how true that is, but you got to understand a good manager is a person that knows how to hype up their fighters, and that right there is a perfect hype, honestly. Movies' friend says, Islam is scary good, though. Do you agree with Ali about Islam taking down DDP? I'd like to see Khamzat versus Islam. Yeah, I do agree with Ali about that, right? Because I think that if Islam has slight successes with Daniel Cormier in the wrestling room, I think it's safe to say that he could ragdoll just about anybody in the world if you really think about it, right? So that's why I agree with Ali on that. Khamzat versus Islam, I don't see how that fight comes about unless, of course, Khamzat decides to move down to 170, which is a possibility. But moving up to 185 for Islam could be out of the question, although you never know. Maybe this guy has ambitions of going for 3 belts, but we'll see. We'll see. On any regard, yeah, let's finish off this video and then let's get to Darren Till and why I think Darren Till has some serious problems matchmaking himself in the future, but also the ceiling and potential that he has going on in the world of boxing right after this one. Efficiency of an Islamic lifestyle and things of that nature, especially conducive to combat sports. Well, that's all that I got for you guys right now. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me give you guys a little tour of this wall and end the video that way. Ciao. Enjoy. So if you guys want to see the rest of this video and the video tour that I did, go check out this video right here on my video section, right? So this is the name of the video, okay? And then before I go on, let's check out the new videos that I have that I want to direct you to, which is this right here, David Allen, everyone's favorite slacker, right? Why is this man so undisciplined yet does really good? Obviously, the breakdown of Morales defeating the gatekeeper in Gilbert Burns, Islam Makhachev, the announcement of him vacating his belt, and then obviously Alex Pereira and the issues that he has with the UFC. So these are the videos that I have going on right now that I would like you to see. But for now, let us talk about, so one more time, the videos that I want you guys to see that's on my video section right now is these David Allen, everyone's favorite slacker, Islam Makhachev vacating the belt, and the breakdown of that particular topic, and also Alex Pereira. 8 days ago, I dropped regarding why he lied about being hacked, and all these situations he has going on with the UFC. And the video that I had showed you guys earlier, DDP versus, yeah, 3 months ago. This is the video that I played. So if you want to watch the rest of this video, yeah, come check it out, right? So Darren Till versus Anderson Silva and Misfits. That's a good fight, right? And that is a great segue that we got going on. Shout outs to Movies as Friends right there. You really do understand the climatic movie cinematic ways of things by bringing up that question, because it brings us to this next particular topic, which is how are we going to match Darren Till moving forward in the future? And you brought up Anderson Silva. That's a very good point. I actually never would have thought about that right off the top. Maybe in a couple of days now, maybe never, maybe never, maybe I would have never thought of that. But then again, maybe the reason why I never thought of that is, where is Anderson Silva right now? Is Anderson Silva able to be active right now? Is he still going to continue on boxing in his late 40s going into his 50s? Obviously, there's Bernard Hopkins as a potential case study of that being a possibility. George Foreman also competing at a very older age. But yes, Anderson Silva versus Darren Till would be a great matchup, because the current trajectory that Anderson Silva, or I'm sorry, Darren Till and Anderson Silva have sort of gone through is the MMA route, right? Although Anderson Silva has fought other people aside from MMA fighters. He's fought Jake Paul, Cesar Chavez, and then the list goes on. I think that he also fought, who did he fight in boxing? He fought Tito Ortiz in boxing, right? So the MMA route, that is the route that Darren Till is at right now. He's boxing MMA fighters. Darren Stewart, a former MMA fighter, UFC veteran, he's fighting him in boxing. Anthony Taylor, also a former Bellator MMA fighter, now going into boxing. It is an MMA versus MMA in a boxing setting. That is what you have to do with Darren Till right now. But eventually, what you have to do is move him up in top echelons competitions of boxing, right? Well, how do you do that? Obviously, you try with Tommy Fury. Tommy Fury is this quote unquote so-called real boxer. And that's another thing I really want to ask about that particular topic, right? What is this obsession that people have about, oh, well, what is a real boxer and who is a real boxer and who isn't, or this and that? I mean, isn't it enough that you have a certain gloves that you use and you use shoes to fight? Doesn't that already kind of classify you as a boxer? What is all these other weird classifications that people have to look for in order to somehow deem somebody a boxer? Like, why does Tommy Fury get to be a boxer and Anderson Silva can't? I mean, I'll be honest with you. Is it really easy to say, I think Anderson Silva has more of bigger accomplishments in boxing than Tommy Fury, right? We're not talking about Anderson Silva as the 16-time UFC champion. We're not even talking about that. We're talking about Anderson Silva in boxing alone. Just in his boxing career alone, he's already accomplished more than that of Tommy Fury. But that is a challenge that Darren Till has. So let's say he beats Anderson Silva. What's next? The other names I have on mind, how about Joshua Buatsi? Put him in there with him. Put him in there with Anthony Yard. Put him in there with Lyndon Arthur. These are good matchups for him. Guys that are 175 all the way to cruiserweight. When Darren Till builds up his skill, how about this? He could fight Brandon Glanton, a guy who just came off of a 12-round decision against Chris Billum-Smith. He could go fight Chris Billum-Smith as well for a cruiserweight championship. The list goes on of the people that Darren Till can fight. Now, the problem with trying to get these fights going is, are these guys going to be able to comply to these fights? Are they going to show up? Are they going to take the challenge? that is in front of them, that is that of Darren Till, that is that of someone of that caliber. Friends, uh, Movies' friend says Tommy is a joke who wins and calls out a guy he's already beaten before, but yet talks about becoming a champion. That's what I'm saying, right? Like, at what point are you going to continue this gradual step? Till isn't ready for yard yet. No, he's not. No, he's not. Right, 2-0 right now. He's not. But what I saw out of that fight with Darren Stewart, there is a potential for him to do so. Also, what I'd like for Darren Till to do now in the world of boxing is I'd like to see him implement a whole lot more, let's say, footwork in his footsteps, right? Have a little bit more to his, to his rhythm, have a little bit more of a ring generalsmanship, kind of circle around guys that are trying to cut him in, right? So that's something that he really needs to work on as he moves up at a top level in boxing. Till versus Danis would be a good presser. That would absolutely be a good fight. But here's the thing: do you think Dylan Danis will take that fight against Darren Till? I think the opposite. I don't think that he's going to take that fight at all. You want to know why? Look, check this out, right? The reason why he's not going to take that fight, Conor McGregor, if he's still homies with Dylan Danis, which I'm sure that he is, he's going to confront him. He's going to say, mate, you can't be fighting Darren Till. Darren Till is a fucking problem, lad. He's a fucking problem of a thing, yeah. He's a fucking gorilla of a man. And he can strike. And Conor McGregor knows this. And he's going to warn his buddy to not go through with this. Why would you go through with this? It's not a good idea. It's not a good idea at all. Till versus Carl Froch. You know what? That's a good idea. Because think of it like this, right? Darren Till, in his first professional fight, was going to go up against Julio Cesar Chavez. So you're telling me right now that he's not ready for yard? Maybe so. What about Lyndon B. Arthur? Would he be ready for him? How about Brendan Glanton? Look, I understand Darren Till is not an experienced boxer, but he is a highly experienced combat athlete. Already has over 20 fights in his MMA career. On top of that, he's had 44 Muay Thai fights, went nearly undefeated in Muay Thai. On top of that, now he's gaining experience in boxing. He's a seasoned combat athlete. And look, here's the thing. Anderson Silva was not exactly a boxing aficionado all throughout his entire UFC career or even his Muay Thai career. In fact, the majority of his strikes and where he learns how to box like that is from Muay Thai. So, understand that from that particular perspective, right? Let's see here. I want to see what other people in the boxing world have had to say about Darren Till. I want to see if let's see if G-Man Boxing had something to say about Darren Till. I know he had something to say about Johnny Fisher lately. So let me see here. What did he say? Oh, okay. Wait. Darren Till has had okay, stomping grounds. Okay, let's see this for a second. Let's see if we can. Okay, so KSI and Darren Till have a little face off. There's the IFL. Okay, let's listen to what he had to say in stomping grounds, and then maybe we'll also look at what he had to say in Till versus Perry. Wouldn't be bad. No, and you know what? These two guys have been going at it, had a little banter back and forth, a little friendly banter, a little frenemy situation going on, and they got a history going on. Remember when Darren Till was like, "Oh, you want to go to the spa, mate? I thought you meant you want to go to the spa. I thought you said you want to spa." And yeah, he's like, "Yeah, we'll spar too," and Yeah, but okay, here's Darren Till in Stomping Ground. Shout out to Stomping Ground
On
YouTube.
the zone. Just make sure.
Right, be quiet there, Gary.
Congratulations.
Nice one, mate. Thank you.
Got you? We good?
Yeah, shut that door, Gary. Please.
Got to make sure the settings are right.
I said please. I said please. I'm sorry.
All right, movies. As Brent says, what about Till versus Romero? You know what? That's a good idea as well, right? But that's what I mean, right? So all these matchups are great for Darren Till, and I think that he beats all of them. I'm talking about the MMA fighters, maybe even Carl Froch as well, right? Dylan Dennis for sure. He'll smoke him in the first round. But he has to graduate away from that at some point, right? And if and when he does, what would be the appropriate step after that? And that is the question that we would like to know in the future.
Sorry.
Darren, fucking hell, you went to war tonight. Come out with a decision. You must be over the moon.
Do you know what, mate? I am. Look,
Shout out,
I knew I was always going to win the fight. I knew I was going to
shout out to Savachi Financial. He says, laughing my butt off, Dylan Dennis. And then Movies' his friend says, Callum Smith. That's what I'm talking about, right? Now that right there is a very advanced level right there for Darren Till. And then there's a good storyline as well. Both Liverpool guys. One guy's an MMA legend. The other guy is a boxing. I look at it like this, right? This is how I judge a fan by how much of a hardcore boxing fan he is, right? If you know Canelo and you know Terrence Crawford and you know the big names of boxing, yeah, everybody always says, yeah, Muhammad Ali is my favorite boxer. That's what everybody loves to say. I mean, it's a casual take, right? But man, if you know who Callum Smith is, you are a boxing hardcore. I mean, that's really all there is to it, right? It's kind of like, all right, not everybody in the world knows who Justin Gaethje is, but if you know who Justin Gaethje is, you definitely know MMA. Just like if you know Callum Smith, you know boxing. And yeah, I would think that Darren Till and Callum Smith would be a good fight. And here's the thing. I don't know if he wins that, at least not right now. But this is what I mean. He has to develop himself. Yeah, maybe go in there and box Romero, and maybe right afterwards follow up with Carl Froch, a broken older Carl Froch, which I think that he has a strong chance of beating. Not just in MMA, obviously in boxing as well, because I doubt Carl Froch is training like the way he used to back in the days when he fought with the likes of Jermaine Taylor and whatnot.
Always going to win the fight. He's not as good as me, but at the end of the day, sometimes, if I wasn't a tough bastard like I am and I can fight like I can, he could have took the win there because of how hard he is. He's hard as nails, he's a hard man. There's no harder fight than him. There's no harder fight. So look, he brought it. He tried to hunt me down, even I sit up, so I was whacking him with shots and he was just looking at me. But I'm happy I got the win. I'm happy it was a good fight. I got paid, man. I got paid.
That's what it's about. That's what it's about.
He said he got paid for that fight. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it is a Misfits card after all. Yeah.
That's a molecule. I think that means I'm so small we've been struggling.
Look at this one guy in the comment section of that video, right? If Carl Froch is 50% of his former self, he would annihilate Darren Till. I don't understand these boxing guys, right? Like they really have this delusionality for their heroes, even if their heroes are not in the right mental or not in their right physical state of being, right? They just really have this belief, especially the boxing guys. The boxing guys, my goodness, man, they are the worst when it comes to that. They really are. And this is an example of that. Froch is 47. That's what I'm saying, and hasn't fought in 11 years. Till beats his behind. Yeah. So tell me why this gentleman right here, Jack Gallagher, just doesn't understand that. Like, explain to me why this guy right here doesn't understand that. Carl Froch once boxed at Wembley Stadium in front of 80,000 fans. Yeah, like, go figure. Like, we didn't know, right? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, look at this. Look at this comment again. Right? This is the delusionality of boxing fans. Let's hear what people had to say about this. I'm sure they roasted this dude for saying that. Zero chance in the world does Froch beat Till. Okay, there's some sensible people here. Froch is one of the few ex-pros that these novelty fighters should avoid, as he seems to stay in pretty decent shape. And I do think that he would play the game, so to speak. Froch seems like the type who would actually hurt one of them just to prove a point. He certainly beats Till in a boxing match with relative ease. Oh my goodness. With relative ease. You see this? Like, they're talking about, okay, with relative ease? Are you kidding? Like, how is that relative ease, man? Okay, and then what in the world? What world are you living in? What world are you living in? Okay, that's in response to saying that zero chance in the world that he beats Till. I mean, what world are you living in thinking that a 47-year-old Froch can beat Darren Till? Right? Why? Because these people are looking at him like, hey, this is my hero. He can, do it up. He can do this and that. Yeah. So, all right. Yeah, not really. Froch once boxed. Yeah. I think we understand why Tommy Fury pulled out. Yeah, yeah. That's a very sensible comment right there. Why he pulled out. All right,
No
back
one
to.
watching this believes you was eating beans and toast.
Oh, I wasn't eating beans and toast. It's caviar and arrows everywhere.
Did you think it would be an early night after that first?
Mate, I tell you, everyone who comes to this gym with me manager and everything like that, like, they keep no lease and the sparring partners down proper pros and they're going away going, wow. I mean, it's a hit like a truck. And I come across what Joseph and Declan have been
So
teaching.
look, what Darren Till is saying here is that a lot of his training partners that have trained with him says that he hits like a truck, and he very well does. But not only that, he has great technical skills. He's got great efficiency in the way that he throws his punches. He can be a serious problem for a lot of people in the boxing world. And you know what? Oftentimes, look, a lot of the hype that comes from the boxing world, oh, we think that this guy is going to be the next guy. It is predicated on the fact that these guys are boxing with top level guys in the gym, right? And then how are they doing with these top level guys? Those are indicators of that. There's been so many stories of Errol Spence Jr. beating the heck out of Floyd Mayweather in a gym when he invited him to come spar with him, and then he just, basically beat the living heck out of Mayweather, and Leonard Ellerbe had to step in there and replace Errol Spence with somebody else. But again, that's practice. You never know, right? Till versus Dimitri Andrade wouldn't be bad. Till is a bit bigger. A little bit more advanced. I would say that's a little bit more advanced. Savachi Financial says Dana got dropped as a promoter for Canelo. Turkey dumped him. I may make a video on that, actually, and I'm going to release that sometime tomorrow. But yeah, I'm definitely going to make a video on that. Josh says, we is Chama not fighting Inc. Why? We is Chama not fighting Inc. Why? I think there's some negotiation issues going on with the UFC. And also, I think the fact that Alex Pereira constantly raised his hand to take these fights, Dana White called him again to come and do UFC 317 to sort of fill that card up. And then he said no. So that one time that he said no, now all of a sudden he is probably the big enemy to the UFC, or may have some strained relationship as a result of that. But either way, we really don't know, right? I don't want to speculate. And if I am going to speculate, I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to tell you that I'm speculating for the sake of entertainment. But for journalistic integrity's sake, I don't think I could honestly tell you that, you know what, I think this is the reason why X, Y, and Z, as to why Alex Pereira is not going in there fighting Ankalaev. But Jerry, he says that he has a test coming up in June, so he's got a college thing going on. He wants to complete school. So, okay, he has a legit reason to sort of turn that down. But it looks like Ankalaev may have to sit and wait a while and just sit on that belt before he goes and defends it, because neither Alex or Jerry are ready for one reason or another. Okay, Ja asks, when is Islam fighting? When is Islam fighting? That remains to be determined and announced later on. When is MVP fighting? That's a good question. Let's look up when MVP is fighting and then get back to Darren Till for just a second here. So Michael Venom Page. Let's see what is his next upcoming fight. Are there any upcoming fights for Michael Venom Page? 23-3 so far. Okay, still very good record by the end of his career. So he's got a win over Sharaputin. He just grappled Carlos Condit. How about that? Had a grappling win over Carlos Condit. It was a grappling match too, so kind of shows you that he's a little bit well-rounded in his martial arts endeavors. Obviously, he also has that bare knuckle fight that he has against Mike Perry. He went to a majority decision on that. That fight could have gone either way, but yeah, shout out to him on that. Financial Savachi says, Genocide Joe got prostate cancer. Yeah, man, that's crazy. I heard about that today, about Joe Biden getting that. I wonder how long that's been going on, or they've been hiding that just so they can save face and put him up in office. But again, one never knows. But yeah, that was crazy to hear about Joe Biden. Josh says, what is your opinion on Morales as a guy to beat Della Maddalena? I think that what I saw out of the Gilbert Burns fight shows that he is a top 5 fighter, if not a championship level fighter. And the kid's undefeated, 17-0, 18-0 now. I think that he is going to be a problem for a lot of people. He could be a problem for Ian Gary. He may even well finish Ian Gary for that matter. But I think that, in all honesty, I know this is going to sound biased from a lot of you, but Islam beats a lot of these 170 guys, in my opinion, including Jack Della Maddalena. And you know what? Jack Della Maddalena isn't even the best 170 guy. He was number 5 when he came into this fight, not even number 3, number 2, or any close to the championship rankings. I mean, 5 is close enough, but there's 5 and then there's 4, 3, 2, and 1, right? Which he wasn't. But now he's a champion, but he's not the best champion. I think Shafkat is probably better. I mean, even Ian Gary, I think, is probably even better than JDM and could probably beat him on any given night. So I think Islam Makhachev has an easy fight ahead of him for this 170 fight. He's basically Eddie Alvarez at 155 when Conor McGregor came up, and Islam is the Conor McGregor of 2016 and 2025 as we speak. So, yeah, that's my opinion on Morales and Jack Della Maddalena. I think that he could beat him. I think that if Jack was to fight for the title tomorrow, he definitely could. Savachi Financial says he's a Buster Douglas. That's a very good point. He is a Buster Douglas. JDM is literally a Buster Douglas in this situation right here, right? He beat Bilal Muhammad, right, which was the heavy favorite, similar to Mike Tyson being a heavy favorite. But overall, Buster Douglas was susceptible to being beat by everybody who was at the top heavyweight at the time. Obviously, Holyfield beat him. Lennox Lewis had a great chance of beating him. Even Riddick Bowe had a great chance of beating him. All the top heavyweights of that era during Mike Tyson's time had pretty much all the great chances of beating him. So Till versus Ben Whitaker. Ooh, okay. That is a good one. Ben Whitaker versus Darren Till. I think that's a 50-50 boxing fight. Ben Whitaker. Now, look, Ben Whitaker has great footwork, great movement. It doesn't always come out depending on who he's fighting, right? It's not always up there, right? The footwork is not always showing for one reason or another. But I think it depends on the type of opponent that he has. And I think Darren Till has a type of style that I think can really stop. I think he can stop Ben Whitaker from that type of movement. Okay, so Josh says, but JDM is nice with it. He is. I just don't think that he's the best welterweight. I just think that he was the guy that came here out of default, right? Shafkat was supposed to be the number 1 contender, the rightful number 1 contender, but he had an injury, and as a result, JDM just took the opportunity and was a bad stylistic matchup for Bilal, and the results showed as they were. Josh says, is welterweight the most exciting weight class right now? I would say so. I would say so, Ja. I think that it is the most interesting weight class right now, and I'm going to show you why. Okay, let's take a look at the UFC welterweight rankings in the current moment of time right now. Okay, let's take a look at this athlete ranking. Movies as friends is 155 in my opinion. I agree, especially that now that Ilya Tapora has joined 155. Yeah, I would say absolutely that is the case. Jack Della Maddalena is number 9 right now in the pound for pound in the UFC, whereas Islam is at number 1. Josh says, I think we go Ian Gary versus Bilal. That's a good one. Uh, Morales versus MVP. That's also a good one. Shafkat versus JDM. Okay, these are all good fights that you have, right? MVP versus Morales. Would that fight make sense? Yeah, I think it would. What is the ranking of Michael Venom Page in the welterweight division right now? So Michael Venom Page is actually lower than Michael Morales. Michael Morales is number 12 right now in the current moment in time, maybe a little bit higher after that win against Gilbert Burns. Obviously, the rankings come in on a Tuesday. This is going to be a Monday. This is Monday right now. If you are in the West Coast, at least Monday morning past midnight. But yeah, uh, that's a good one right there. MVP and Morales would be a banger too. Movies as friend says Morales versus Protz. Yeah, you know what? I think Michael Morales is too advanced for Carlos Protz, in my opinion. Protz is worse than MVP, correct? I think that these fights would only be like big name money fights, right? Just glam fights and what have you, not necessarily true competitive architecture. Everything that you're saying right now is true competitive architecture. I agree. Gary versus Bilal would be a good fight. Shavkat versus JDM. Well, okay, that's not a realistic fight, only because Shavkat is injured and because JDM has a date set with Islam. Well, not a date, but an actual matchup, but not a designated date for the particular moment of time or a designated numbered event. So here's what I would do, right? Gary, instead of Gary versus Bilal, I would put, let's say, Gary versus Buckley, because not only is there a competitive matchup that comes with that, there's also inherent beef that's going on with Buckley and Ian Gary also. What I would do with Leon Edwards, I would bring back Jorge Masvidal and have him fight. There's a built-in storyline for that one. Gary versus Dream. Okay. Oh man, I forgot about Buckley. Yeah, he's in there too, and this is what makes this division great, right? Sean Brady versus Gary. That's a good one as well. That's a good one as well, but not better than Joaquin Buckley, right? Obviously, I think there's a good chance that Sean Brady would just try and out grapple Machado Gary, but then there's a chance that Gary would probably outstrike him for as long as he can keep the fight standing. So welterweight is the most stacked division. Yeah, peace be upon him. The name that you mentioned, Ja. But yeah, okay. So let's take a look at how stacked this division is right now. Right, Jack Della Maddalena at the top. Bilal Muhammad, number 1. Sean Brady, number 2. Rightfully so, because he beat Leon Edwards, and Bilal Muhammad beat Sean Brady, so that makes sense. Shafkat at number 3, that makes sense. Maybe you could do Shafkat versus Brady, right? Then there's Leon Edwards. Then there's Kamaru Usman still waiting in the wings. Now, Ian Machado Gary at number 6, Joaquin Buckley at number 7, Gilbert Burns at number 8, Colby Covington at number 9, Jeff Neal at number 10, and then Stephen Wonderboy Thompson at 11, Michael Morales at 12, 13 is Carlos Prates, and then there's Vicente Luque still hanging around, and then there's Michael Venom Page. Yeah, this is a pretty stacked weight class, stacked in a way where every single one of these guys can beat each other at any given night. That's what we mean by stacked in that particular matter. Brady, Gary, Buckley, MVP, Morales, now Islam, JDM, Shafkat, and Bilal. Edwards and Usman are still around. Yeah, they are. Now, they have to evolve though. They have to evolve and they have to get some wins. But you know what? I really would like to see Jorge Masvidal come back and fight Leon Edwards. There's a built-in storyline in that, right? Again, not necessarily for the competitive architecture, but for just the storylines that are involved in their past history. Obviously, you know that little London street fight they had going on. That needs to be settled. That needs to uh, have some kind of closure, and then there's a story behind it. Okay, so let's get to Darren Till, and then we can also get back to how stacked the welterweight division is. Let's hear what he had to say after his win against Darren Stewart.
He tried to come across like whack that left over, and he fell back, like he fell onto that. I thought, oh, first time, yes, get it, go on. Got up, I looked at him, hitting him again, and I thought I had him out in the first, and he just stayed. But it was like as the rounds went on, he just got stronger and stronger, and I was just a bit like, I was a bit demoralised. I was like, what more do I have to do to you, mate, to get you out of it? And then obviously in the last, I just whacked him, mate, and I thought that was like something.
And you know what? Sometimes it is like that. And you also have to remember, in boxing, there's these big gloves that really prevent you from hurting the guy the way that you want to, in a way that you can in MMA, that can get you that early finish, right? There's a lot of that going on in boxing as well that you have to really take into serious account.
Crumbles back up again. Fair fucking play. Oh, I'd love to know what he's eating. Like, tell me that. I'd love to know what he's eating, Darren. Come on. Is there anything that he surprised you with? I guess you knew that it'd be pretty hard. Just an hard bastard. Just an hard bastard. Look, us MMA fighters, people have got a misconception about boxing and MMA. Like, boxing is a harder sport to fight for. You have 12 rounds of constant head trauma. There's no rest in MMA. People are a bit misconstrued. Like, when I'm an MMA fighter and people ask me, and people think my initial answer is going to be, oh, MMA. MMA is not the harder sport to fight for, because you have rests in between. You can't throw elbows constantly. Boxing is much more traumatic.
That is interesting that Darren Till said that. He thinks that boxing is harder because you have to constantly throw shots, whereas with MMA, there are certain rest periods. I got to agree with him on that. I'm going to tell you why, right? In an MMA fight, or in a sparring session, or if you're doing anything MMA related, whether it's an actual sanctioned fight or just sparring, or in a street fight, let me tell you, when you're throwing punches, 100 punches at your opponent, and then let's say either you or him take one or the other down, man, let me tell you, that is a rest period right there. That's like, oh man, I'm glad I'm not throwing these punches right now. Now I can just work, try to transition from full guard, to half guard, and then from half guard to side control, then from side control, right? Just try to fight through these positions. Now you're in a resting position when you're on top of someone, or when someone is on top of you. This is what you can look forward to in MMA. Whereas with boxing, you're just constantly there throwing punches, trying to get away from punches, right? And then you're doing that for 12 rounds. And again, I told you, boxing is an aerobic sport, whereas MMA is an anaerobic sport, where you constantly have to express constant pushing, constant pulling, just like what you do in grappling. But even with those exchanges, there's still some rest changes. Let me read what Ja here says. He says, Usman, former champ; Edwards, former champ; Bilal, a former champ; MVP, Bellator champ. I don't think he was ever champ in Bellator. I want to be very careful about that right there. Covington, interim champ, correct. JDM champ. Islam is champ. And I think Shavkat and Thompson were interim. No, I don't think Thompson was ever interim. I don't think Shavkat was ever interim. Yeah. Boxing is more disciplined, 100%. Well, I mean, all combat sports and all martial arts is discipline. I guess it just depends how you apply the discipline. But if you mean by the word discipline, are you saying in your words more difficult, perhaps, right? Or maybe that's the word that you meant. Maybe boxing is more difficult. If that's the case, yes, it's difficult in terms of the head trauma and the continuous head trauma that you have to take, because that's there's really nothing else, right? And Darren Till is right. You can't throw 100 elbows at once, right? An elbow is only something that you can throw for a special moment of time where it permits you to throw such shots. Movies' friend says, if you if you're rocked in boxing, you have to stand your ground. In MMA, you shoot for a takedown. Yeah, and that's kind of what Darren Till means when he says that there is that particular resting period that you can sort of inhibit while all of these chaoses are going on.
Over the years to fight, you see these boxers at 32, 35, and the brain damage because it's 12 rounds of constant trauma to the head. So, that's that. But he's just a UFC animal, just strong, just coming forward, getting stronger as the rounds going on. As I said, I'd love to know what he's eating.
I just spoke to him. Do you know what he said to me? Go on. I'd love to do a Misfits tag team, you and him on the same team. Against both of the pool boys.
I'd have him with me for you.
Hey, I forgot about that. There is Misfits tag team boxing, but to be honest with you, Darren Till and Darren Short, I highly doubt that the Paul brothers are going to take you up on that particular fight. I really do. I really highly doubt that they want to take up that fight, especially at a tag team boxing match. Now, I know Logan Paul does tag team in wrestling, but that's wrestling, and I highly doubt he's going to take that fight, nor will they allow him in the TKO department to take such fight.
You know me? I don't want to fight him on the street. Trust me. If he comes out on the street, you're having a long night, mate. Trust me. So yeah, he was grunting at me when I was hitting him. He was grunting. You know what I'm saying?
I will say.
He's an impartial, how are you? So.
Do you know what his name is, by the way?
Parsons.
All right, I was just wondering if you actually thought him.
Movies' friend says, I think Paul is too big for Till, and I hate to say it. Too big for Till. Do you mean size wise or do you mean clout wise? Let me know what you mean by Jake Paul is too big, because if anything, I think that him and Darren Till are literally the same size humans, right? Obviously, different shape, different body types, different functionalities of bodies in terms of what they both trained to be as kids going into being professional athletes. But yeah, I think overall, size wise, Jake Paul and Darren Till are the perfect size for each other. But if you mean big in terms of clout and notoriety, yeah, I would agree with that. I think Darren Till just doesn't have that name value the way that Conor McGregor or Paul does, and I think that's that goes without saying.
I've been enjoying the thought that you think he's actually got faster. You said in the ring afterwards, you said, we might have taught a lot of people on Misfits a lesson tonight that you don't have to jump over tables and fly over people, throw tables at each other. You can respect each other, be honourable, and put on be the best fight
it's not like that. It's not like that. Even in the gym, my coaches and our gym's full of pro fighters, and you go in and you've got your banter and stuff like that. But then when it's time to train, it is a respectful sport, and everyone who's around me, my friends and my coaches know. They know I'm a bit of a learner, what have I, but they know I've got a huge amount of respect for my peers, my coaches, and my opponents. All this is, sometimes it is real. People say, oh, it's all for the camera. Yeah, a majority of the time, but then sometimes it's not. Like, sometimes it is on, but we show the level of it doesn't always have to be about disrespecting your opponent to have a war. Like, it's all fun and games. Even my coach said to me, just before, he's like, Darren, it's time for violence. But that doesn't mean I hate the guy, but it's time for violence, mate. I'm trying to knock his head clean off, and he's trying to do the same.
Well, violence is one thing we definitely saw tonight. What do you think KSI is thinking, sitting ringside watching that up close?
He doesn't want to fight me. Come on, he knows that. He doesn't want to fight me, and that's okay. That's okay.
You're happy to not even call him out on that.
Look, I've said it. This is.
So let's see. Let's read what it says here. Yeah, Josh says Till is a good striker, but I think Paul beats him. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? Paul is a lot more seasoned now. Obviously, he's trained boxing in terms of preparing for high notoriety matchups more than Darren Till has, so that has to factor in to a certain degree. Movies, his friend says Paul is looking huge ahead of this fight. He's walking around 230. He's got power in the right. Stewart had Till on the ropes and was landing good shots. Second round by Paul. Okay, so you have Paul by second round knockout. Okay.
This is a good gig for me. I'm making money. But I ain't going to stand here and beg for fights. I ain't going to stand here and beg for Jake Paul. I ain't going to stand here and beg for KSI. If the fights happen, I'll campaign for the fight. But you will never see me beg for these fights. I will not lose my pride or morals over shit like this.
They'll be hard to come by though. If you put in performances like that, a lot of people in this scene might go.
Every fight I have now, there's less and less people going to be taking it. Only the hard bastards are going to take my fight. My coaches know.
Oh, you said rear naked choke. Okay. Well, I can buy that. I mean, Paul does have a wrestling background, and I think that's going to help to a certain degree. And then I think that would, but I think Darren Till has a better jiu-jitsu. So okay, you're talking about MMA rather than rather than boxing, I suppose, when you say rear naked choke. But yeah, Paul out grapples him. I could see that. I could see a world where that happens. Movies, his friend says Jai Apataya versus Paul at cruiserweight. Paul needs to be stopped once and for all. Yeah, I think Jai Apataya would be a very risky fight for Paul. I think that him and his team would know that, and I think that his team would discourage him from taking that fight. But on any regard, with Darren Till, I think that he's very honest about what he said here, and I think he's very accurate when he says that even though I'm putting all these good performances, less people are going to want to fight me, these big names that you're talking about. And he's right. Uh, there's a lot of boxers out there that are so good that never had that opportunity, quite simply because they are too good, and they might be a serious risk for certain people. Demetrius Andrade is a great example of that, right? Like, I think Demetrius Andrade should have been a lot bigger than what he is, but the reason being that he didn't have the right promoters, he didn't have the right people around him, and then on top of that, he was just scary for a lot of people to fight. So he never had the opportunity because nobody wanted to give him a chance, at least not in the big names, because he was just a threat for people from 160 to 168. Movies, his friend says Jaw would absolutely unalive Paul. Yeah. At least that is the overall consensus right there, right? Andrej is too small because of his style too. Too small for Darren Till. I would agree. Yeah, I think they're in two totally different weight classes. And that alone, right? If let's say you were to present that fight with Demetrius Andre, maybe he would turn down Darren Till because of that. And he just lost too. He did lose, huh? Demetrius Andre. Um, Demetrius Andre. Let's see who he had lost to recently. Against David Benavidez, obviously. Okay, yeah. That's not a shameful loss. Obviously, David Benavidez is who he is. Oh, yeah, I do remember that fight. That was 2 years ago. Man, it's been 2 years since he's been inactive since then. We should get Paul versus Martin Bacoli. Yeah, man. You know what? If there's any time to beat Martin Bacoli, it would be right now, right? Imagine, David beat him and took his soul. Movie, his friend says, yeah, he definitely did. He definitely did. I did remember that fight now, right? But yeah, that was 2 years ago. I can't believe that was just almost 2 years ago that fight had taken place. But on any event, okay, let's continue on to what Darren Till had to say here.
Hold on. They've even said it, Darren. You're gonna have to start looking a bit shit because they're gonna start. I'm gonna get back in the gym straight away now. I'm gonna keep working my craft with me.
So his team is telling him, Darren, you got to start looking like crap, because the better that you look, the less people are going to be attracted to wanting to fight you. In fact, they want an easy win. They want an MMA fighter that's going to lay down, and you're not that guy. So they're telling him, yeah, you got to lay a bit. You just got to, let me, all right, just make sure these headphones are working right now. Oh, mic check 1 2 1 2. You guys can hear me. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Hold on. Mic check 1 2 1 2. You guys can hear me. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Okay, can you guys hear me still? 1 2 1 2. You guys can hear me. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Can you still hear me? Can you guys hear me still? Okay, okay, good. All right, so I don't need these headphones. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that, yeah. Okay, so Paul said he wanted AJ. Yeah, that's a ridiculous matchup in my opinion, right? I don't know. He wanted AJ. I don't know how real that matchup is, but yeah, I say give it to him. Yeah, what does he see that he thinks he can beat AJ? I mean, is that predicated on the Daniel Dubois fight? Because you're not Daniel Dubois, right? Josh says Jake Paul versus AJ. I would buy that. Wouldn't even pirate it. Wow. Okay, so out of all things, out of all the fights out there that you can pirate, specifically, most fights that you should be pirating are those that are sort of like BS freak show fights, but instead you would actually pay for this. Josh says that's interesting. That's a very interesting notion right there. But yeah, what was I saying prior to all that? Let me see. What was I saying? For people from 160 to 168, movies is. Oh yeah, yeah. You have to look like crap a little bit in order for people to be enticed to wanting to fight you. You know what? People said that when Khabib fought Al-Iaquinta, he purposely tried to make himself look like less of himself, right? Because people said, well, Khabib should have starched this dude or this and that, right? Well, why didn't Khabib starch this dude? Well, lo and behold, the reason why he didn't starch him was because Conor McGregor was sitting at a jail cell that night watching the fight, pirated the fight through his phone while watching him beat Al-Iaquinta in Brooklyn that night, right? And so Conor saw that fight and he said, you know what? I think I could take Khabib. I think I could take him. And the next thing you know, a couple of months later, it was spring, it was April, it was May, it was June, it was July, and the next thing you know, it was September, and then it was October 2018, the biggest fight of mixed martial arts history. Here we go. And the rest was history. And that was all because Khabib purposely made himself look bad against Al-Iaquinta. So maybe that's what Darren Till needs to do, and that is what his team is advising him to do. But okay, further on.
Coaches, I'm going to get better and better and better and better and better, and that's all I want to do. I'm in my prime, I'm solid. Coaches, so fucking phenomenal. I've had an 8-week camp, or the 16-week camp, but I've had an 8-week camp of me eating, me training, everything's been perfecto. Well, we won't use these as call-outs then, but I'll just put 3 names to you, 3 that I would want to see and 3 that people out there I know would love to see. Jake Paul, Mike Perry, Cole Froch. Okay, again, Jake Paul's the biggest money fight, and I think after that, Mike Perry.
And there it is. These fights we've been talking about right here just now as we are reacting to this.
The second biggest. So you would initially think I would call the Jake Paul out, but no, I want to fight Mike Perry. That's the 80.
There you go, Mike Perry. I think none of these real boxers are going to take these fights, right? I think the only people that are willing to take these fights are the actual MMA fighters themselves, and they're just going to stick themselves into an island of their own, right? Their own league of former MMA fighters who no longer want to throw any kicks, who no longer want to do any takedowns or do any jiu-jitsu, and they just want to get in there and box, right? They're literally on the league of their own, and they're the only people that can fight each other. Now, I tell you what, that's not a bad start. You see, a lot of these boxers, how do they start out? They start out by fighting these lower level names, these no-name guys, and this and that. And then next thing you know, now they start moving up level of competition. They move it up a notch. Well, okay, maybe this is the starting point for many MMA fighters who are aspiring to be boxers. Maybe fight in your own lane first. Okay, you did well against Darren Stewart. You did well against Anthony Pretty Boy Taylor. Now you're going to do well against Mike Perry. Now you're going to do well against Jorge Masvidal. And then the list goes on of former MMA fighters that he could get in there with, right? So you do good with all of these guys, then what? What happens next? After you do good with these guys, what happens is that you can eventually move up into boxing. Anderson Silva, you beat Anderson Silva. Great. Now you can move to Julio Cesar Chavez and see if you can beat him. Then we can just use Julio Cesar Chavez as the gatekeeper of professional boxing, using him as some sort of litmus test for MMA fighters to try and get passed by before they can move up to the upper echelons of the championship levels in boxing. But yeah, that's just a little theory that I have right there. And I think that this is the problem that many MMA fighters turned boxers like Darren Till are going to have. They're just going to be an island of their own until they can actually prove themselves at a higher level. And then these higher levels of a top echelon boxers will actually be willing to take that risk. But even with Turki Al-Sheikh being part of the boxing world, there's still boxers out there that are not willing to take the risk. But I think that there are people out there that you can incentivize to take that risk, especially if you build a big enough name for the likes of Darren Till while he is in boxing. So,
yeah, in the making. Mike Perry, Lee. Mike Perry. Mike Perry, Masvidal, any of them. Okay, Mike Perry and Masvidal, that's what we're going for, yeah. So there you go. I don't think Jake's a reality this year, but we've got years, mate. I'm in my prime. I'm fresh.
Yeah, and then Jake obviously has Julio Cesar Chavez right in front of him, not too far from now, actually. That's actually on June 28th. That's the same day as International Fight Week. UFC 317 is when? The 28th. Okay, and then Jake Paul versus Cesar Chavez is when? Chavez Jr. That's obviously in LA. Date. When is the date for that one? The date is June. Okay, so that's all in the same day. All in the same day as the UFC card. Okay, so yeah, we got a stacked day for June 28th. Raw Dog said Virgil Ortiz is a great boxer representing old school mentality. Okay, why? Why is that? Tell me about Virgil Ortiz and why you say that. I sort of I may have a guess and as to maybe understand why you think that, but I want to hear from you why ultimately why you feel that way. So yeah, let me know on the comment section below. What is the reason for that? So okay, let's moving on with Darren Till here.
I feel good. I'm here. It's baby steps for me with everyone. So that's it. You expected him to wipe out Chavez? I was meant to fight Julio Cesar Chavez. They knew we were training phenomenal for that. I'm better now than I was then. I think Chavez probably should win the fight, but I'm not going to count Jake Paul out. He can fucking punch, and he's a unit. We all know he's on.
Wow, that's amazing. He actually thinks that Julio Cesar Chavez is going to win that fight. Jake Paul is the favorite in this fight, I would assume, right? I think Ortiz versus Caleb Plant is a good matchup. Okay. Raw Dog says, high boxing IQ, seek and destroy style, 90% KO rate, fights elite competition. Okay. Okay. That's what you meant by representing old school boxer. Okay. I can see that. Yeah. There's not a lot of guys that have a high knockout rate, but at the same time has a good high IQ in terms of boxing skills, right? So he does sort of encompass that in a way, right? Sort of like a Roberto Duran type of character, a Tommy Hearns type of character. So yeah, I see why you make that comparison. That's a good one. Yeah, Virgil Ortiz for sure. Ortiz versus Plant is a good stepping stone for Ortiz, says Ja. Yeah, he definitely is.
Some type of a chocolate steak or something like that. Yeah, you tell me, what is Jake Paul on? I ain't privy to what Jake Paul's on. Rice pudding, is eating normal food. Beans on toast. Beans on toast.
Okay, so Ja says, I think Crawford window is closing, so probably Ortiz versus Ennis is the build-up. Yeah. The Crawford window is closing, so okay. So closing for who? Like, are you saying that Ennis is not going to have an opportunity to fight Crawford? Is that what you mean? Josh says Crawford looked like he is regressing in the Madurov fight. You know what? That's a good point. I don't know if that's regressing or if Madurov is really just that good. Now, how did Madurov do after the Crawford fight? No, I mean like anybody to fight Crawford. Okay, okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, because he may very well just retire after Canelo, right? I mean, after he beats Canelo, what would be left for him other than Jaron Ennis? I would suppose, right? So Madurov is good. So let's look at Madurov, right? Let's see how he did after the Terrence Crawford fight. Did he have a fight right after that? He's getting to that point, in my opinion. Same with Canelo. Correct, right? And this is why it's a perfect time for them to have this matchup right now. Raw Dog says Virgil beats Madurov better than Bud did in his next fight. So, yeah, okay. So Josh says, yeah, on that one. What did, okay, so yeah, Virgil Ortiz. He fought Virgil Ortiz, and he went to a decision with him. Prior to that, he knocks out Michael Sorrow, but then he goes and gets a draw against Michael Sorrow. What is this? Oh, okay. Fight stopped in the third after a clash of heads opened a cut. Oh, okay. That's why. Okay, yeah. Yeah, man, so Madurov is very underrated. I mean, Josh says, I mean no hit on Madurov either. He's a solid fighter. He gave Crawford problems in that, though. Yeah, he did. He did. So I don't know if that's going to be indicative of the Canelo fight, right? Also, you got to take into consideration, Crawford and Canelo are not that smaller or bigger from each other, right? Especially with the reach advantage. Terrence Crawford just seems to have the higher reach advantage in that, even though he is supposedly the smaller man and what have you. So Canelo and Crawford are both in the sunset of their careers. They definitely are, and this is why it's really the best time for them to take an opportunity to have these fights right now. So, but yeah, man, Dana White got dropped as the promoter. I think that may have had something to do with Dana White having to promote UFC's Noche on the same day, right? Which is why Turkey El Sheikh decided that, you know what, we're not going to do this on a Friday. We're going to do this on a Saturday. I think they were going to somehow collaborate an event where they do one on a Friday for the boxing, which is Crawford and Canelo, and then UFC's Noche on a Saturday to close it out. So Josh says, so I see Ennis Ortiz being the future big matchup. Yeah, that is true. That is a big matchup in the future. That is something that they have to build up next, right? Just like Canelo and Crawford, they've been building up for a long time. Obviously, the time came now that Crawford had cleared out the 147 division, and now he's coming up here. He has the 154 belt, which he won against Madurov. But yeah, Josh says also Dana got called out for promoting it. He did. He did. I think that they were reading a lot of the backlashes that have been happening, right? You know, due to the fact that he wasn't concentrating on the UFC and was being pulled into all these different directions, from power slap to boxing, everything in between. Raw Dog says, yes, how can you promote two huge events that may compete? Yeah, because I think the reason why they decided they weren't going to do that on a Friday is because there's just a whole lot of arrangements that people have to make, especially with a fight of this magnitude, right? You got to have people out there that are going to need to call babysitters, or are going to need to make hotel accommodations, that are going to have to call off work or try to get off work as early as possible on a Friday. They would rather just do it on a Saturday where they can get the full benefits of it, irregardless of the UFC being there. So, yes, how can you promote two huge events that compete? To answer that question, Josh says UFC seems more diluted than it was back in 2015 and 20. Let me know what you mean by that. Let me see if this is what you mean right here in the following comments. Josh says talent seems worse on the cards That's due to a saturation. I have a good explanation for that. Guys like Fiziev, who are exciting, are not pushed. Well, here's the thing, right? Fiziev was pushed. He just needed to beat Justin Gaethje. And that's sort of the problem with Fiziev, with Benoit Saint-Denis, with Gamrot, with Beneil Dariush, all these guys that were supposed to be the next top upper echelon of the 155 division just could not deliver their mission, and as a result, losing to Dustin Poirier, losing to the likes of Oliveira, and losing to the likes of Justin Gaethje, I think really stunted their promotion in which they needed. So Raw Dog says star power in the UFC is dipping. I have some comments on that, Raw Dog, which also correlates to what Ja is talking about with that comment where he says UFC seems more diluted than it was back in 2015 and 20. I have an explanation for that. Star power in the UFC is dipping. So yeah, but don't push a guy like Fiziev by pairing him with Gaethje out the bat. Well, that was the point, right? They had to pair him up with Gaethje because there was no one else for Fiziev to realistically fight down below. They needed to get Gaethje out of there. Gaethje was on his way out, but then Gaethje said, not so fast. You know, my CTE hasn't really totally kicked in yet. And in fact, his CTE made him an even better fighter, right? You know, all the damage that he took. So 1000% Raw Dog says. Josh says, that's my point. Raw Dog gets it. Josh says, look at what they did with Sean O'Malley. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? They absolutely did match him up correctly and accurately and got him up to the championships and really developed him, right? But with Fiziev, I see what you're saying. Yeah, they didn't really do all of that with him. That's what they need to do with guys like Fiziev and who. Okay, so I see what you're saying. Yeah, maybe give them easy matchups and this and that. Okay, so a couple of things, right, to sort of answer all those questions, right? When Raw Dog says that UFC star power is dipping, the reason for that is predicated on the fact that you now have a TV deal with ESPN where they are looking for multiple events to go on every single weekend, right? Every single weekend, there's always a card. So now it's just a completely saturated market, a completely saturated fight market, right? There's pros and cons with that. With a consistency of having cards every week, you build more stars. You want to know why? Because now you're putting up all these fights. Now you have more highlights. Now you have more fights. And now you can accommodate an 800-man fight roster, right? So that is a reason why the star power is dipping as a result of that. Whereas back then you had like, what, 8 fights in a card? And that alone was engaging enough for the audience to be like, all right, you know what, this is tolerable. Now the heart grows fonder. We're not getting it every week, but now it's just a different market now. Now, with Sean O'Malley, the way that they built him up, right, he had a very special rise. Now, if you know, obviously, the Contender Series, he beat we don't even know who he beat, but it was a highlight knockout, and Snoop Dogg was commentating on it, and that really put him over as a result of that particular matchup. So after getting put over from that Snoop Dogg matchup with Uriah Faber on the mic, he went viral. So now the UFC had to make a conscious decision. All right, you know what? Let's match him up fairly. But the other side of that, the UFC has to be the toughest competition in the world. And as a result of being the toughest competition in the world, they have to put Fiziev in there with Justin Gaethje very early on in his career, and they can only hope that he does his part by beating Justin Gaethje so they can get Justin Gaethje up out of there and move Fiziev right back up. And that's what they did with Gilbert Burns this weekend with Morales, right? That's literally what they did. They fed and sacrificed Burns for an undefeated Morales to make the 170 division even more stacked so that they can create new and fresh matchups in the future that they need to promote. And you know what? You may say that the star power is dipping right now, but the way that the UFC is structured, These guys are one win away, one viral knockout, one viral submission, one viral fight night or fight of the night award away for them to obtain superstardom. And right now, the way that these divisions are stacked, the way that the UFC is built, it's almost like, how do I say this, a self-sufficient automatic system and machine that is going to do its job in terms of promoting those guys where they need to be. So Josh says the cards were stacked back then. They were. They definitely were, because they had all the stars that they needed in a small, in a smaller roster. So yeah, and then the events weren't as frequent, so the heart grew fonder every time you had an event every other 2 weeks, or maybe even every other month. Now it's literally every other week, and that's, yeah, that's a lot for people. Josh says, I think it would be better for the UFC to promote prelim fights on fight nights and market those prelim guys that way. Okay. Josh says, save the guys like Saint Denis for actual cards. UFC right now is being promoted like... Yeah, you know what? That is a good point, right? Like, why should Morales and Burns be in a card like the way that we saw this weekend, right? Why not in a pay-per-view? Like, why can't all these smaller guys just take the prelim fights and then build their way up? That is a good point. Josh says, I want to do an experiment with you. Go to the next UFC card and let's read the fights. Not the fight night, an actual card. An actual card. Okay. Let's go do that. Let's go do that. So, okay, we'll go to Wikipedia. We'll do UFC 316, which is the next card coming up. Okay, so not a fight night card. So obviously I'm at UFC 316 right now. That's June 7th. So how about this? We got Blanchfield and Barber. That's next week, by the way, May 31st, 2025, right? Barber versus Blanchfield. And then just 7 days after that, it is O'Malley and Merab in New Jersey, June 7th. Okay, so what is your experiment you're trying to do? I am on Wikipedia right now. Full card in front of me with UFC 316. Now what? Now what would you like to experiment with, Ja? As I follow you along in this experiment, because I feel you're going to take me somewhere with this. But okay, let me read the card. Let's read the fights. Okay, so UFC 316, right? We're at UFC 316. Up top, Merab versus Sean O'Malley rematch. Okay, co-main event, bantamweight fight. Julia Pena defends against Kayla Harrison. Middleweight. We were talking about him earlier, Kelvin Gastelum versus Joe Pfeiffer. Obviously, this fight was supposed to be in Mexico. By the way, check out my video that I did on Joe Pfeiffer, where I called him out for his homeless story and how I think that being homeless and being a jacked white dude is not an excuse, but on any regard, yeah, that caused a lot of controversy right there. Okay, so Pena and Harrison is garbage. You think so? Kelvin Gastelum is garbage. Okay. Well, I mean, Kelvin Gastelum is a pretty legendary fighter at this point, right? And Joe Pfeiffer is sort of, the upcoming guy, wouldn't you say? But you let me know what you think about that. Okay, welterweight, Vicente Luque versus Kevin Holland. That's a pretty decent fight. Now, how about this? Bruno Silva versus Joshua Van. Ooh, Joshua Van. Okay, that's one of the top flyweights that are coming up right now. That's an interesting fight. No, I mean, no disrespect, but those aren't big names, man. Luque versus Holland is underrated. Okay, but Joshua Van is obviously on the come up. He's a top prospect. Okay, but then we go down to the women's flyweight. I don't think really anybody cares about this. There's Ariane De Silva and then Wang Kong in the flyweight division. And in the featherweight division, there's Jekka Sargi taking on Yu Ju Sang. Nobody knows who that is. And then Killian, they don't even have a Wikipedia page. Okay, Silva fight is mid. Like, all of these fights for me are fight night fights. Okay, so I see what you're saying. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So when you're saying fight night fights, are you insinuating that you would put Merab and Sean O'Malley in that same category as well? Would you would you confidently put okay, even O'Malley versus Merab is potentially a flop too? Okay, I see what you're saying. Could that be because they're just smaller weight class guys? I mean, you know, when Demetrius Johnson fought Joseph Benavidez for the title, they put them early in the card and it was a title fight. If you put that in perspective, right? So is it like a small man thing or this and that? No, Merab versus O'Malley is the main event fight. Merab O'Malley is a card fight. Okay, okay. So I see what you're saying. So would you compare back in the days? Okay, let's bring up a card that was really big back in the days. I have one card that we can sort of bring up to light, right? But it'll probably be a bad fight. Okay. Uh, okay, here's a fight. Here's a fight that I have in mind. UFC 128. You guys ever seen the picture that I have with Uriah Faber? The picture that I have with Uriah Faber was a fight. It was a fight week of UFC 128. Right? Let me see if I can pull that picture up just to show you guys. Holloway versus Poirier 2. Okay, so let's go back in time, right? How about let's go back in time to sort of test your theory out a little bit, okay? Nah, the old cards were trash too because UFC was on the come up. Okay. Okay, so okay, bad example then. Bad example. Okay, but yeah, I was just gonna bring up UFC 128. That was actually the same card that John Jones beat Shogun Rua in, and that was also the same card where WEC had been bought by the UFC, and as a result, it was Uriah Faber's UFC debut taking on Eddie Wineland. So it was this right here. It was this picture right here. So this is what I had. It was Uriah's last training session before UFC debut. And yeah, so that was a UFC. So, okay. So you said, okay, so 2015 to 2020. Okay. All right. Jones versus Rua was good. Faber versus Wineland was more mid. Okay. So 2015, Ja. I'm gonna name a card for 2015. UFC 193. Holmes versus Ronda Rousey. And by the way, Holly Holmes is going to be boxing in a Jake Paul card on June 28th, but that's neither here or there. Okay, get to like Cody versus Cruz card. Okay, let's do that. Let's do that. Let's follow through with your experiment. Okay, let's go through that. Holly Holmes versus Rousey. Holmes versus Rousey was a huge at that time. Yeah, and it was a big card too. Okay, so let's look at those two cards. Okay, UFC 193. Okay, we're gonna look at the cards for that one, UFC 193, and then also the one for Cody, Cody versus Cruz. That was UFC 207. Okay, so we're gonna look at UFC not comparable to Macy Barber, bro. Yeah. I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. So, okay, Cody Garbrandt versus Dominic Cruz. Yeah, and Ronda Rousey fought Amanda Nunes in that card. Nobody gave Holmes a chance then, and shot on Rousey after the L people suck. Yeah. I see what you're saying. Okay, so let's compare the cards then, Ja. Okay. Joanna versus Whaley was fire too. Okay, so just two cards at a time we'll concentrate on. Okay, and then we'll rate the we will rate these the star power of these cards. Okay, let's start with UFC 193. Okay, because that's what I'm looking at right now. Okay, UFC 193. This is Ronda Rousey, Holly Holmes. Obviously, at the time, Ronda Rousey was the biggest star ever. Joanna Jędrzejczyk, also a big star. This was in 2015, by the way. Thinking about it, wow, like 10 years ago. Joanna was huge at the time, correct? Mark Hunt took on Antonio Silva. Can you believe that? Antonio Silva. Yeah, Antonio Silva has not been the same ever since then. How about this? Uriah Hall versus Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker gets a decision win in that one. Steven Struge, he was, you know, he was placed perfectly in this card, obviously, right? You know, a great heavyweight at the time, great card opener. Uriah Hall versus Whittaker was a crazy matchup back then. Struve was a bit mid. He was mid, but obviously that's the reason why he was put in the first fight of the main card, right? So prelims. Let's get to the prelims. Jake Matthews, still around during this time. Shout out to Jake Matthews, now fellow Muslim convert, taking on Areola. Didn't really know much about that guy. Kyle Noak. Okay, Kyle Noak was a big local hero. You know, Kyle Noak was the bodyguard of that Australian TV guy that got eaten by, I believe his name was Steve something. I forgot his name. But he was that guy that got eaten by a shark in Australia. He was his bodyguard, by the way, right? While he was his bodyguard, he set up a training facility for him to train at. Kyle Noak. So yeah, Kyle Noak was a former bodyguard of some famous Australian guy or whatever, right? So 4 bangers right there, and this isn't even an amazing card. Okay, so then Anthony Posh taking on Gian Vellante. Obviously, Gian Vellante is a training partner of Chris Weidman. Danny Martinez, I didn't really know much about this guy, right? So they were the first fight of the evening. Where is this guy right now? Danny Martinez. Where is he now? He's a professional martial artist. Danny Martinez, okay, competes in the flyweight division of Taura MMA. So, okay, so he fights in the, okay. Oh, okay, so he hasn't fought in a while. Okay, so that's been a long time. All right. So, and you will see what I am saying. Okay, get to the cards with 3 championship fights. Okay, so now let's look at UFC 207. Okay, that's the Dominic Cruz and Cody Garbrandt fight. This was in December 2016. By the way, one of the best times of MMA during that time. So what do you have here? You got Amanda Nunes. Again, another Ronda Rousey card. Amanda Nunes had beaten Misha Tate already, right? UFC 200, so her star power was rising. And then Amanda Nunes just, yeah, yo, look at that card stack. That's what I'm saying, right? Dominic Cruz against Cody Garbrandt. Yeah, I remember that was one of Cody Garbrandt's performances ever. I mean, he looked absolutely untouchable in that fight. TJ Dillashaw against John Lineker. I think John Lineker right now fights at 1FC. Obviously, TJ Dillashaw is now retired. TJ Dillashaw and was a banger. Garbrandt versus Cruz was a banger. Nunes versus Rousey was a banger. And yeah, this is all Josh saying that it's a banger. And yeah, I agree with him. It was absolutely a banger. Tariq Safadine. You know, this is a guy I've talked to a few times online before, back in the days in Facebook. Dong Young Kim, that was a good fight. He got a win off of that. Dong Young Kim was a top welterweight for a long time. How about this? Luis Smolka versus Ray Borg. Okay, Ray Borg is mid. Vasquez is a banger. Velasquez, yeah, Velasquez was supposed to be in this fight, but it got canceled. Okay, let's get to the prelims, but it didn't pan out. Right. That would have been great, right? If Velasquez would have been a part of that. How about this? Johnny Hendricks versus Neil Magny. Neil Magny actually beat Johnny Hendricks in that right there. That was a big win for him. Antonio Carlos Jr. Hendricks, Magny was a banger. How about this? Carlos Jr. versus Marvin Vittori. That was a banger, right? Mike Pyle versus Alex Garcia. Knocked him out in the first round. That was, yeah. And then Brandon Tatch. How can I forget about Brandon Tatch? He gets Nico Price, submits him in the first round. Mid, that would be mid, right? That would be classified as mid, wouldn't you say? All right, so now let's get to the early prelims. Obviously, there was only one fight, and that was Tim Means versus Alex Oliveira, and that was a draw, a no contest. Yeah, so Nico Price wouldn't be mid for me. So, okay, I see what you're saying, man. I see what you're saying, right? 2016, he was exciting back then. Yeah, 2016, I think, was one of the best years of MMA, wouldn't you say? Like, it was very exciting. Like, think about this, right? Michael Bisping was a very exciting champion, right? You know, he was like another Conor McGregor, British, Irish, trash talking type of guy, something straight out of like a Guy Ritchie movie, something out of a Tom Hardy movie or this and that. So yeah, it was great. He was a champ, and then there was all these fights going on, all these different fight nights. So you would agree that yeah, 2015 to 2020 was the golden age. Now, when you say 2020, Ja, do you also mean by 2020, does that also include uh, the pandemic? We peaked at Masvidal and Covington. Okay, when Covington and Masvidal fought each other, that's when you're saying that it peaked. When was that card? Let's see. Let's do some more card analyzation on that one, right? Um, UFC Masvidal versus Covington. Okay, so 2015 to 20 is just an estimate for me. Okay, so but would you say that the cards were pretty stacked during the pandemic as well, or not? Okay, so that was UFC 272. So UFC, yeah, that was UFC 272. Okay, let's look that one up. UFC 272. All right. Yeah, pandemic. I think they were stacked too, from what I remember. Yeah, yeah, because everybody wanted in, right? Every fighter wanted in. They needed money and this and that, so they all stepped in. Oh yeah, Bryce Mitchell got a win over Edson Barbosa on that one. That was a pretty big win. Uh, Raw Dog says I ordered UFC 2 and have followed ever since. Wow, man. So you went that far, man. So you must be, you know, just a little bit older than me, because I remember when UFC first came out, 1993. I was like uh, 7 or 8 years old or something like that. Yeah, we had guys like Khamzat and Holland coming up. Yeah, and they were very active, right? Recently, maybe 2023, 2025 is where it really started to decline. Raw Dog says 48. Okay, okay. So, okay, so you're from the Gen X era in that regard. Okay, so let's look at the Covington Masvidal card, since you said that's when it peaked, right? And that was a pretty decent card too. But okay, let me show you that card right there to kind of put this in perspective. Okay, so we got Covington versus Jorge Masvidal. That was a decision. You had Rafael dos Santos versus Renato Moicano. This is when Moicano was just really, you know, coming up in competition, and many people felt that that competition was too much for him. Masvidal Covington is just an estimate, kind of a milestone card. Okay, but we'll compare how the cards started declining from that point on, right? Obviously, you know, this is the 2022 era, that era that you're talking about between 2023 and 2025. So Dos Santos and Moicano was a solid fight. Bryce Mitchell, this is when he started coming up against Edson Barbosa. That was a very good win. It was a good fight for his time, for sure. And Kevin Holland, right here, staying active, right? Gets knockout over Alex Oliveira. And then Sergey Spavak gets a knockout over Greg Hardy. Okay, so a banger of a card to open up with in the heavyweight division, right? And we all know where Greg Hardy is now. The Kane versus Dos Santos trilogy was excellent. Yeah, yeah. That was also another golden era of MMA, I would say, right? Greg Hardy was good at marketing fights. He definitely was, and in a controversy that came along with it. I remember people made this big deal about, oh, you're going to have Greg Hardy fight while these women are fighting, or this one woman who was like a victim of such and such. And it's like, I don't know how that's correlated to anything, but either way, yeah, he brought a lot of controversy in the mix. Okay, so Jalen Turner against Jamie Malarkey. Yeah, still the same kind of standard of fight that you would probably see right now, right? Marina Rodriguez taking on Jan, Nicolo taking on Kennedy, and you see Kennedy is now a top 15 heavyweight. which again kind of tells you the declining nature of the heavyweight division. And then that card was the prelims of that card was opened by Myra Moroz taking on Maria Agapova. And in the early prelims, what did you have? Brian Kelleher. I remember him. Okay, so that was a good win for Omar Nurmagomedov. Tim Elliott against El-Kheer, obviously part of Team Eagle. Devontae Smith taking on Klein, and then Dustin Jacoby. Decision win over Michael Ola Jachuk. Okay, that was a very big win. And Manun Farut and Jessica I were supposed to be in that card. Okay, so it was a pretty decent prelim. Yeah, so I mean, this card seems worse, though, compared to the others we just looked at. Yeah, I see what you mean, right? This is the era where they started declining, as you were saying. Raw Dog says, remember Hardy used his inhaler. Yeah, that was crazy, right? And then out of nowhere, after he used that inhaler, I think they disqualified him on the spot right there. Good prelim. Josh says, I mean, this new Sean O'Malley card looks like a prelim compared to even this Masvidal card. I agree with you, man. I'd have to agree with you on that, right? Yeah, there is this, massive decline now with these cards, and and one has to wonder, what is up with that, man? Minus the O'Malley Marab. Yeah, you know what? They said that when McGregor fought Cerrone, that card was very lackluster, right? They made it a very top-heavy card because they relied a lot on McGregor. I think this is sort of what's happening with this particular card right now. They're relying so much on the star power of O'Malley, and in the rising star power, that of Marab, as a way of, I guess trying to just rely on them to, to make this fight what it is. But on any regard, yeah, that's what they do now, top heavy. Yeah, man, Ja, you're bringing up some very good points, man. Shout out to Ja, man. Ja is, he's the star commentator of this particular live stream on this one, man. He brought up some really good points, and then it really made me think about a whole lot of things about modern MMA today, nostalgia that comes with MMA and this and that. They should make amazing actual cards and thin the fight nights. Well, see, that's the problem, John. The reason why they can't thin out the fight nights is, quite frankly, because they need to, I guess, they're contracted and obligated to have all these cards put on as much as possible, right? At least that's within the ESPN deal. Now, the new TV deal that they are going to sign, now that remains to be seen if they want the same type of format, right? Do they want the same type of format in terms of, okay, you know what, we're going to have, X, Y, and Z, this many fights from this time on and this and that. From what I heard, Netflix didn't want any of that, right? Like, they wanted to just have the top fights or the top pay-per-view fights. They didn't want to make any of this, like Apex cards or this and that. They just wanted the top fights. So I think what UFC is going to do now with the TV deals is that they're going to decompartmentalize their TV networks. So in other words, maybe they're going to have an Apex card in ESPN. They're going to keep that for sure, just so they can continuously build fights. But then they're going to probably have the pay-per-views either reserved for Netflix or maybe Prime, and they're just going to spread out all through different networks and TVs and this and that to, try to spread their product as much as possible for the different needs that they can provide, whether that would be for hardcore fans, casual fans, or big events for everybody and everything in between. So Josh says they should make amazing actual cards and thin out the fight nights. Dana used to be really good at protecting and preserving the brand. Yeah, I think that Dana White is unfortunately just, spread it a little too thin, right? Raw Dog says the backstory of the fighters seem to have been lost. I remember when they had Sean Brady versus Leon Edwards just recently, right? They did have a little countdown show. And remember, this is not this is not by any means a pay-per-view fight, right? Sean Brady and Leon Edwards is not a pay-per-view fight, but because of that, they sort of still. I think they did a little documentary for ESPN in between those fights, which I thought was interesting because I'm like, wow, this is a fight night, but they're doing these documentaries and this and that. But yeah, that would be a good idea to do that. The backstory of the fighter seems to have been lost. And then Josh says, yeah, that's a great take by Raw Dog. Again, I agree, man. Raw Dog definitely made a good take on that particular matter. So yeah, man, great points that you guys are bringing up, right? Just the difference of cards back then as it is now. You know what? This is definitely something that I'm going to bring up again on my next live stream, probably sometime in the morning or maybe in the afternoon tomorrow. So for sure, I'm going to be doing multiple live streams. I'm going to have a video coming out talking about Dana White and why he was demoted from being the promoter of Canelo and Crawford. And also kind of speculate as to why Turki El-Sheikh wanted to change this fight. I think we sort of talked about that already, but we sort of gathered a little more information on that particular matter at hand. So we will delve into that. Oh, and let's finish off this video reacting to Darren Till and what he was talking about after he just beat Darren Stewart right here, and then we'll call it a night from there. So let's finish it off with Darren Till from here.
We know, come on, he's a unit, he can fight, he can whack, but, Chavez should win the fight.
Well, I know Ty Mitchell called out Cole Froch tonight. I don't think that's a possibility. Is you and Cole Froch ever a possibility?
Again, look, Carl Froch is going to see this, and he's gonna have a lot to say about me.
Look, he loves it though. He'll love it. He'll love seeing this.
But this is the thing. I don't want to get come across. I want to be a realist always in everything. Carl Froch is a fucking phenomenal fighter. He was one of the best British fighters we've ever produced, and he can take a shot and he can give a shot. But that doesn't change the fact I'll fight him and I'll beat him.
Darren, top man, really appreciate your time.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that he easily beats. I think he easily beats him. Look, age is a factor. Okay, I mean, remember when Holyfield stepped up to Vitor Belfort? We all saw what happened. We all know what happened. We all know what can happen if a guy who is way over the hill takes on somebody that is within their prime right now. And you could argue Darren Till is still in his prime. In fact, I think Darren Till is barely just 30, right? Fresh Melon Juice says Darren Till versus Jake Paul. Maybe. But I tell you what, that fight would be a whole lot better than people would have expected, I think. I think that fight would be a lot more competitive, especially now that Darren Till is easily developing himself to where he's at right now. So, all right. So with that in mind, let's recap on everything that we talked about, right? Obviously, we talked about Darren Till having a chance of becoming a world champion in boxing. Because that is his ambition right now. But a lot of boxers are afraid to fight Darren Till, and here's why. We talked about Khamzat and DDP. We recapped all the fights that went on this weekend, boxing and MMA, which also included Morales versus Burns. Also, we did touch on a little bit of David Allen and the Johnny Fisher fight, although I did talk more about that in previous live streams before this. We also talked about why the current UFC cards right now are a little bit more thin in comparison to the golden days of MMA, which consisted of UFC in 2016, 2015, when it was just a whole lot more fun back then, and it was just really exciting, and just you never knew what was coming around the corner with MMA and UFC back then. And you know what? And this was at the time where you didn't have the likes of Turki El-Sheikh, or you didn't have the likes of Endeavor or TKO and the WWE being part of the business. But now that they are, we would think that we would have even better fights. Well, there are times where we do have great fights, but then there's just a lot of weeks that are a lot of lackluster fights, a lot of fill-in fights, a lot of fluff and what have you. And it's great, yeah, that we did talk about that. We talked about the potential matchups that Darren Till has. and why he's going to have problems finding opponents in boxing in the future. And I think the only way that he can get out of that is just continuously fighting the guys that are in the circuit of former MMA fighters turned boxers, and hopefully get a big shot of fighting well-known boxers in the future. So Fresh Melon Juice says Dana White is not promoting fights anymore. He's busy gambling, doing drugs, and slap. Ja says, and yes, agreeing with that. Well, here's the thing, right? Wasn't he always doing that? I mean, wasn't Dana always doing all those things? When did he not gamble when UFC was in the golden age of 2016, right? I mean, he definitely did. He slapped his wife and then went balls deep into a power slap. Boy, let me tell you, the optics of that did not look good, right? Because that was the time when he was really promoting power slap at the time, if you remember, right? That's really when all of that power slap stuff started happening. So yeah, it was not a good look. It was not a good look at all. But on any regard, guys, he used to be obsessed with the UFC. Now he seems tired. So here's the thing, right? I'm going to leave it off with this. I think this is an interesting to sort of leave off the topic, right? Because we talked about how cards were stacked back then and how it's not now. Dana Power slapped his wife, Josh says. Okay, so do you guys know about the 5-year drought of a UFC fan, right? Like the 5-year phases of a UFC fan. Do you guys know about that? Okay, so these eras that we've mentioned, right? You ever got together with a group of guys for UFC fights? And I know everybody who's in this chat and anybody who's watching this can relate to this. I know that you can relate to this and understand. You ever had a group of guys that you bring in together and watch UFC fights with? This is one of those types of situations where you do it consecutively, right? Okay, you and your homies are like, hey, listen, there's a UFC fight next week. Let's all get together. All right, good. Then the next pay-per-view, you guys get together, and then you get together again. And then it becomes this tradition where all your friends are now getting together within this span of 1 year, 2 year, maybe 3 years. And then after 5 years, guess what happens? You and your homies have different priorities in life. MMA is just not the most important thing in your life anymore. These Saturday night fights are not what's captivating your attention. You have other means of attention and other means of socializing on Saturday nights. So therefore, what you used to do 5 years ago, where you were watching all these big cards and all these big fights in the UFC, getting together with friends, hey, I'm going to pitch in $5, I'm going to pitch in $10. You go out and you get the drinks, you go out and get the finger snacks, or you go out and buy the chips, and then we'll all chip in together and this and that. It's a 5-year thing, and you guys know what I'm talking about. You guys can relate to this, and then before you know it, you guys are not getting together anymore. This is literally what a lot of fans go through, right? It's this cycle of, you know, getting together for the fights and being interested in the fights, and then maybe even going as far as looking at the storylines of the fights, watching channels like this, watching channels like Ariel Hawani, watching MMA YouTubers talk about the fights, and then all of a sudden you just start losing interest. This happens to a lot of people. It is a common cycle that many MMA fans go through. What you doing with a WWE belt, man? Oh, you know, it's just, you know, a nice prop for what I got going on. Because you know what? It's literally the blurriness of the world of fake fighting and real fighting, right? This was a medal that I won back in 1997 at Point Fighting Taekwondo tournament, right? So to sort of give me an understanding that, you know what got me into real fighting was fake fighting. That's what it symbolizes. Fresh Melon Juice says Ariel Hawani. Yeah. So what got me into real fighting was fake fighting, and that is the inspiration for MMA, right? A lot of people don't like to admit it, but WWE is an inspiration to MMA, and the reason why it is because it influenced its way of promoting and way of pageantry and way of showmanship. Did I did point I did point fighting back in the day. Okay, so that's what's up, Ja. I really like that we do have people that are in this chat that actually do train, that do understand martial arts, that do have Bruce Lee OG MMA player. All right, my man. Ja says you got to watch Bill Superfoot Wallace. Bill Superfoot Wallace, is that who is that? Let me know who that is. Lead leg goat. I'm assuming that's either a karate fighter or a kickboxer or something to that degree. But yeah, let me know before I tap on out of here. Let me know who that is and who he symbolizes. Okay, so he was a kickboxer. Okay, Bill. So before I go, I'm gonna look up who that is. Bill Superfoot Wallace. Okay, so he was a former kickboxer. Oh, okay, I've seen this guy before. Okay, this is the guy that you're talking about. Yeah, I've seen him before. Okay, I've seen some of his pictures before. I think I've even seen some highlights of his fights. I didn't know what his name was, but okay, I'm very familiar with who this gentleman is. Okay, so shout outs to you on that. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tapping into the live stream. I really wanted to make just a quick one on this one. Obviously, I went a little bit longer, which is great because shout out to Ja and shout out to everyone in the chat. Shout out to Fresh Melon Juice. Shout out to Sabachi Financial. Also, Raw Dog. Shout outs to Raw Dog. Shout outs to everybody else that has been tapped in with this live stream that stuck with me. And not only that, also brought up some good conversations regarding the history of the UFC and the golden age of the UFC, and also sort of adding my commentary on the 5-year span that most UFC fans go through, and all these fight parties that you guys used to have. Now you guys are prioritizing something different in your lives, which is a normal thing for many MMA fans, and maybe even me included. If I never got into MMA YouTube or anything like that, I don't think that I would be watching MMA in the frequency that I do. I would probably just be watching the big fights, and then that would be it. All these other Apex cards I wouldn't really care about. But now I'm in MMA YouTube, so I do have to care to a certain degree. So I have to be tapped in, and I have to be knowledgeable of these things in order to compete with the other MMA YouTubers out there. But on any regard, please help me to become the biggest MMA YouTuber out there by hitting the like and subscribe button. And also, let's read one of these last few comments. Bill Wallace, Benny Orriguez, and Rick Rufus, yes, were the GOATs back then. Correct. Bill Wallace had a 70-mile-per-hour round kick. Wow. Okay, so that's amazing, man. That's quite fast. Okay. So, all right, on any regard, guys, thank you for tapping in. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Tap in with me once again for another live stream tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon, and maybe even tomorrow evening. I'm going to go live stream as much as I can because I'm on the road to becoming one of the best MMA YouTubers out there, inshallah, and that is my goal. That is my mission. Help me with this mission as I help you entertain and give you guys the best MMA content there is out there on YouTube. And don't forget to like and subscribe. I will see you in the next one. Have a beautiful night. Have a good night's sleep. Everyone around the world, have a good morning. See ya in whatever part of the world you are. God bless you, and take care of each other and everyone around you. God bless.